Hey guys, tonight we slip quietly into a world of whispering banyan trees, crumbling sandstone lions, and the scent of moss after rain. You're standing at the foot of Angkor Thom, the sprawling walled city of ancient Cambodia. The air is thick and warm, almost like honey, and your sandals squish slightly in the damp, red dirt. You haven't even made it through the gate, and already you're sweating in places you forgot you had. The cause of your suffering, the temples, not just one, not two, but dozens of them, and they're huge, really, really huge, towering spires that pierce the sky like the stone fingers of long-forgotten gods, carvings so intricate it looks like the walls are whispering, courtyards the size of football fields, only instead of turf. It's marble slabs, slick with dew, incense ash, and sometimes things you'd rather not talk about. You probably won't survive this shift, but don't worry, nobody else did either. The job of keeping these temples clean was grueling, endless, and, somewhat hilariously, never actually finished. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're listening from somewhere special, post your location and local time in the comments. I read them all, and yes, I did see the guy who listens from inside a tent in northern Saskatchewan. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're not alone on this trail. All around you, slow-moving shapes rise out of the morning mist. Some are older women with scarred arms and woven baskets slung over their backs. Some are barefoot boys in baggy trousers too long for them, dragging oversized coconut brooms behind like sleepy swords. No one talks much at this hour, not because they're shy, but because they know what's coming. The cleaning begins at dawn, and if you're lucky, it ends before your arms feel like they've been turned into wet noodles by a very angry elephant. You follow the procession past the crumbling gate, under the gaze of giant stone faces. Their eyes are half closed, smiling that serene little smile that says, "Yes, I see you, also you missed a spot." You'd think ancient temples would smell like dust and age, but here it's a mix of sandalwood, fish paste, and damp earth, plus a touch of lizard breath. You're pretty sure that's what that is. Inside the city, the scale hits you all at once. This isn't just a temple, it's an entire stone civilization that someone forgot to tuck in at night. Temples upon temples, galleries upon shrines upon pavilions, each one covered in delicate carvings, celestial dances, jungle animals, entire battles playing out in silent relief. And all of it is filthy. It's not obvious at first. The morning light hides it well. But get closer and you'll see. Black mildew curling along lintels, thick dust coating the Apsara dancers' eyelids, sticky stains beneath cracked gargoyles, and everywhere bird droppings. Birds apparently have no reverence. Your first task is simple, or so you think. You're assigned to one of the outer galleries, 4 corridors open to the wind, each one longer than a football field and about as breezy. Your broom is made of coconut midribs tied together with jungle twine. It's less tool of precision and more dried salad fork. As you drag it along the smooth stone, it makes that rhythmic scratching sound, whoosh, whoosh, that you'll hear in your sleep tonight. The floor is coated in a fine layer of pollen mixed with temple dust and crushed bug wings. It's slippery. You learn that fast. Your first fall is graceless but mercifully cushioned by a mat of what may once have been banana leaves. No one laughs, they've all done it. The woman next to you offers you a grin and a warning. The bats haven't pooped yet. That's round 2. As you work, the temple slowly wakes up. Monks begin to shuffle by, their saffron robes glowing like embers in the low light. They don't help. They don't even sweep around their own shrines. And that's not their job, you're told. Yours is to make sure the gods don't trip over a chunk of sandstone or slip on a rotting lotus petal. You're not sure the gods walk anymore, but you're also not about to test it. One of the girls near you hums a tune as she works. It's haunting, melodic in a way that doesn't seem to match the effort of the task. You try to catch the words, but it's in Old Khmer, a version so ancient the syllables feel like sand rolling in your ears. According to one of the elders, the song dates back to the reign of Jayavarman VII, the temple builder himself. The same man who apparently thought, yes, what we need here is another temple, even bigger than the last one, maybe with more snakes. And that's another thing you notice, snakes. Not the biting kind, at least not often, but the kind carved into every column and stair rail. Nagas, they're called, sacred, slithery protectors. Historians still argue whether they symbolized fertility, water, or just an early form of psychological warfare against anyone afraid of serpents. At the end of the gallery, your arm already trembling from all the sweeping, you find a small alcove, a recess for offerings. It's lined with burnt candle wax, crumbling petals, and, oddly, a handful of old copper coins. Cleaning it requires using your hands. There's no way around it. As your fingers sink into the wax and flour mush, you wonder how many people, over how many centuries, have stood right here, made a wish, lit a candle, dropped a coin and hoped some stone god was listening. Then your hand brushes something sharp. You jerk back, but it's not a snake, just a tiny broken carving, someone's lost amulet maybe, or a bit of chipped deity. You place it reverently on the ledge and continue. By the time the sun lifts fully over the treetops, the temple is alive with the clatter of brooms, the slosh of water jars, the murmur of chanting monks, and the occasional shout of someone discovering yet another squirrel nest behind a sacred statue. You step back from the gallery you just finished, sweat-soaked and sore, but oddly proud. The carvings look sharper now, the stone floor breathes a little easier. And then your supervisor gestures at the next corridor, even longer than the last, and you realize this is going to take all day, possibly forever. You shuffle toward the next corridor, broom dragging behind you like a limp tail. The sun's higher now, spotlighting the dust motes that swirl like tiny spirits in the air. A cicada screeches somewhere in the rafters, offended by your presence. You sigh. The corridor stretches ahead like a challenge issued by someone with a deeply questionable sense of humor. This is where you meet them, the barefoot janitors of the empire. They're already at work, a loose squadron of human mopheads moving in slow unison. No uniforms, no time cards, just faded sarongs, sinewy arms, and the kind of patience you only get from years of scrubbing things that never stay clean. There's a teenage boy using a split coconut shell to scoop water from a clay pot and fling it onto the steps. A woman with forearms like tree trunks kneels on a rag, scrubbing a goddess's belly with what looks suspiciously like a bundle of reeds tied together with banana fiber. Careful, someone tells you, nodding toward a slim girl crawling across the floor with a handful of rags and what appears to be a bowl of grey sludge. She's new, thought she could clean the central dais with just river water. Had to redo the whole thing. You nod solemnly, not because you understand, but because you're too tired to ask. The work is relentless, but oddly satisfying. Every inch of stone you touch feels alive, warm in some places, cool in others, always textured. Sometimes you find carvings that were hidden beneath grime, so thick they looked like plain walls. A set of dancers with finely etched eyebrows emerges from a patch of mildew. A snake's scale pattern suddenly shines. It's like uncovering secrets with each swipe of the rag. Still, your knees ache. Your hands are turning into raisin wrinkles, and there's a suspicious buzzing in your left ear that might be a mosquito, or might be your brain trying to resign. That's when the broom crew shifts into what they call Phase 2. Phase 2 is moss war. The temple stones, beautiful as they are, make terrible flaws in the rainy season. The moss clings to every crevice, especially in the north galleries where sunlight rarely reaches. A kid with stick-thin legs and big eyes hands you a tool that looks like a butter knife mated with a spoon. Scrape, he says simply, and so you do. You crouch down and begin scraping, centimetre by centimetre, lifting slimy green threads from between the stones. It is oddly like peeling string cheese. If string cheese smelled like rot and felt like jellyfish. The boy demonstrates a trick. If you rub the stone with a fistful of dry rice husks after scraping, it'll stay moss-free longer. Longer, meaning maybe a week, tops. You both shrug at the futility of it and keep going. Around you, the barefoot janitors keep up their rhythm. Some hum songs, others mutter curses under their breath, especially when they hit the corners where scorpions like to nap. You watch a woman dip her brush into a solution she made from soaked tamarind pulp and salt. It's for the stubborn mildew, smells like sour soup but works like magic. She swipes once, twice, and the carving underneath gleams. You pause to admire a freshly cleaned stretch of wall, marveling at the sheer absurdity of how long it must have taken to carve all this. Then it hits you. Someone carved it, and someone's still cleaning it, 9 centuries later. Suddenly your job doesn't seem so unreasonable. Just then, a boy yells from the far end of the gallery. He's holding something high in the air, a statue's finger, just the finger, snapped off centuries ago and found under a layer of silt behind a fallen lintel. People gather around to ooh and ah. Someone says, "Stick it back with clay, no one will notice." Someone else mutters, "You're going to glue a god back together with mud?" Another shrugs and says, "Worked last time." Historians still argue whether these improvised fixes were acts of devotion or desperation. Some believe even broken gods deserved restoration. Others think they just wanted to avoid getting yelled at by their overseer with the fancy hat. You press on, arms jelly-like, and notice that the boy beside you is using his broom to gently nudge a frog off the step. It hops away without gratitude. Then you spot it. Up in the corner where the roof meets the pillar, a massive cobweb glinting in the sun like spun gold. You point. The boy sighs. "You," he says flatly, "you're tall." So you become the spider of Vic T. You balance on a slippery ledge, reach up with a bamboo pole wrapped in old cloth, and swipe. The web comes away with a whisper, but behind it another carving, a face half buried in shadow, one eye closed, one eyebrow raised like it's judging you. You wonder if the carver meant for that smirk, or if the moss played a trick on the stone. By midday, the group breaks for water. Everyone gathers around a basin filled from a nearby stream, drinking from carved coconut cups. You drink, too. It tastes like metal, earth, and something suspiciously cucumbery. You sit on a step, breathing in the temple air. It's hot and heavy, but smells clean now. Less mildew, more incense, and that's when you notice the silence. The scraping and sweeping has stopped. For a moment, there's only the hum of insects and the occasional soft knock of a broom being leaned against stone. You all just sit, blinking at the sunlight. A girl beside you offers a palm leaf dumpling wrapped in string. It's filled with sticky rice and jackfruit. You accept it with a nod of eternal gratitude. The temple seems to sigh around you. Birds chirp from the lintels. A gecko darts across a statue's nose. And for just a few minutes, the temple isn't a burden or a job or a crumbling relic. It's a home, one you share with dozens of tired, dust-covered strangers and a lot of gods who probably never expected to be this high maintenance. Then the overseer appears, feathered hat slightly askew, stern frown firmly in place. Breaks over. Back to sweeping. You pick up your broom again with the kind of sigh that comes from deep inside your spinal cord. The sun has shifted, casting new shadows across the stone, and with it the grime has somehow changed too, like it's evolving, sentient, aware of your fatigue. The next corridor is already partially swept by a pair of older women, both with deeply lined faces and hair coiled tightly under scarves. They don't glance at you, just keep scrubbing, humming in low, vibrating tones that seem to shake the dust right off the walls. Your job now, apparently, is lichen duty. Its lichen is like nature's glitter. It sticks to everything, refuses to come off, and is secretly judging you. You kneel beside a column carved with a dancing apsara, her fingers bent into elegant loops. Her nose is dotted with white-green blotches of crustose lichen, hard, dry, like old chalk. You squint at your tools, a flat wooden scraper, a fibre pad, and a small bronze chisel worn down to something between a butter knife and an apology. The first scrape barely lifts a fleck. The second one makes your hand buzz with effort. It's not fast work. It's not glorious work. But someone once said that the apsaras must always be beautiful, even if their feet are covered in bird droppings. You suspect that someone had never actually cleaned one. Next to you, a boy is dealing with a much taller challenge, a carved elephant that's so mossy it looks like it wandered into a swamp and gave up. He's climbing a handmade bamboo ladder tied together with coconut twine and faith. The ladder wobbles like it's having second thoughts. You try not to look. Instead, you turn your attention to the temple floor. Here's something the visitors never realize. The temple floor is not flat, not even close. Time, erosion, roots, and old construction shortcuts have made it uneven and mildly vindictive. Between every slab is a crevice that collects, and I mean collects, everything. One of the barefoot women near you is pulling a small bundle from her satchel. It's wrapped in cloth and smells strongly of mint and onions. She unwraps it reverently to reveal a narrow reed brush dipped in a mix of oil and powdered beetle shell. For shine, she explains. She rubs the mix into the stone using rhythmic circles, and suddenly the floor gleams, like wet obsidian, like someone waxed the moon. Turns out the Khmer had their own version of floor polish made from crushed beetle casings and river sandpaste. Historians still argue whether it was originally intended as cleaning or as a kind of ritual offering. Either way, it works, and it smells surprisingly tolerable. You borrow some of the paste and try it on a panel of stone near the dais. The effect is immediate. The carvings glow like they've been reawakened. Then comes the fun part. Stairs. Temple stairs are a trap. They're too tall, too narrow, and often slightly crooked. They were designed that way, supposedly, so that people climbed them slowly, respectfully, even humbly. You, however, are neither respectful nor humble at this point. You're just tired. You begin the slow process of scrubbing each step with your rag, dodging tiny ants and occasionally flicking off moss that has somehow formed into perfect little green commas. Halfway up, you spot a toad, squatting like a little sentry. You both nod, he does not move, and then, of course, there's the issue of the pillars. Each one is a tower in miniature, fluted, carved, and impossibly filthy. They collect bird droppings, bat guano, wasp nests, and the occasional abandoned sandal. One of the younger boys points upward and sighs. "You get to climb today," he says, handing you a bundle of cloth strips tied around a long stick. You blink, he grins. "Bathtub duty." You didn't realize that was a thing, but it turns out the hollow tops of the pillars collect rainwater, creating narrow, foul-smelling bird baths filled with soggy leaves, drowned bugs, and once, reportedly, a snake. It's your job to mop them out without tipping over. You ascend slowly, balancing on a shaky platform made of wood planks and something that might have once been rope. The wind shifts just as you reach the top. A cloud of gnats rise in protest. You swat them with a cloth and dip the makeshift mop into the pillar, sloshing out old water and mystery gunk. You gag a little. Something squelches. Back on the ground, a woman waves you over. She's standing in front of a long gutter carved to resemble a lotus petal chain. It's clogged. Of course it is. You stare at the mess, petal-shaped spouts jammed with leaves, bird feathers, and a soggy fruit you can't identify. She hands you a long reed brush with a curved tip and says, "You like gossip?" Turns out cleaning lotus gutters is the most social job at the temple. While you scrub and poke and flush each curve of stone, the women around you talk, not loudly, just enough for voices to drift. They trade rumors like offerings, who forgot their offering bowl last week, whose husband fell asleep on the altar steps, which statue mysteriously started weeping in the rain. Spoiler, it was a leak. And amidst this slow, steady cleaning, you begin to feel something strange. It's not reverence. Exactly, it's not peace, but it's close, kind of belonging, like each scrape of your rag, each sweep of your broom, is part of something larger, something quieter than prayer, more persistent than devotion, a constant, centuries-long conversation, between stone and skin. You glance up and notice a monkey watching you from a ledge. He's chewing on something that looks suspiciously like one of your cleaning rags. You sigh. He tosses it back like a spoiled child. The janitor beside you chuckles and says he likes the coconut ones best. Then a bell rings from somewhere deeper in the temple. Lunchtime. The brooms are laid down. The water jugs are gathered. People stretch, crack their backs, and wander off toward the shade of the banyan trees for a quick meal of rice and pickled vegetables. You find a quiet spot beside a carved lion and lean against its flank. It's warm, surprisingly comfortable, and as you close your eyes just for a moment you can still feel the scrape of beetle polish under your nails and the smell of tamarind in your hair. A temple, you think, isn't made of stone. It's made of the people who clean it. You open your eyes to a shaft of sunlight filtered through thick jungle canopy. The temple lion you were leaning on has warmed considerably, almost like a heated bench at a very scenic bus stop. Around you, the others are stretching, wiping their faces with damp cloths, nibbling on sticky rice cakes or dried river fish. Someone hands you a small banana leaf package tied with a twist of straw. Inside, salted coconut, chewy and oddly energizing. You nod your thanks and chew slowly, like your jaw is on strike, but the union hasn't voted yet. Break's over, you head toward the moat. Yes, that moat. You didn't realize it needed cleaning, but of course it does, all 650 feet of it. Angkor Wat's moat is less a defensive structure now, and more a semi-natural wetland packed with fish, lilies, frogs, and a depressingly steady stream of temple debris. The women ahead of you carry rakes made of palm ribs and dragnets strung with knotted rope. One man wears a woven basket on his back, which he proceeds to use like a mobile trash bin. Your job? Skim the top layer. At first, it's almost meditative. The water glistens, reflecting the temple's towers in a rippling shimmer. You wade in up to you, and up to your knees using a flat wooden paddle to push floating debris, crushed petals, beetle husks, wilted garlands, into a bamboo strainer. Every so often, something unexpected floats by. A sandal, a broken bracelet, a small clay bowl from an offering, half filled with water, and one very confused frog. The lotus leaves are the trickiest. When fresh, they're easy to scoop, but once wilted, they sink halfway, pretending to be part of the bottom. Your paddle hits them with a wet schlorp, and if you're not careful, they spray you with a fragrant mix of silt, flour goo, and what might be old fish thoughts. One boy across the moat shouts gleefully, he's found a coin. Then another, someone mutters, "That's from the last ceremony. They throw coins and forget them. The gods don't have pockets, you know." There's laughter. Even the gods need a janitor, it seems. The water grows deeper toward the far bank. That's where the older kids go, balancing on narrow boats made of hollowed tree trunks. They pull muck from the edges using large, flat baskets, dumping it on shore where it steams gently in the heat. A pair of grandmothers crouch nearby, sorting through the wet heap for anything reusable, carvings, bits of sandstone, the occasional dislodged statue toe. Historians still debate whether temple moats were symbolic cosmic oceans or glorified drainage systems. Most of the cleaners you talk to believe it's both. "It's where the gods wash their feet," one woman says, matter of fact, as she wrings out her sarong. "So it better be clean." Around midday, the frogs start singing. They don't wait for sunset, they just go for it. Croaks echo across the water like a strange kind of blessing. You pause to look back at the temple, the towers reaching toward the clouds, and for a moment you imagine all this was built just for frogs and bats and barefoot people with brooms. Then someone shouts, "Leeches!" and everyone starts sloshing to shore. You're assigned to drier ground for the afternoon. Your next station, the central causeway. It's the grand entrance, the stone road that leads straight to the temple's main gate. Tourists love it, pilgrims revere it, and birds use it as a toilet. The cleanup involves more than just sweeping. You've got to scrub, polish, and occasionally negotiate with a pigeon that refuses to relocate. Your tool this time is a square of woven husk soaked in a mixture of vinegar, water, and crushed tamarind. It smells like salad dressing left in the sun, but it eats through grime like magic. You get to work, brushing between each block. The joints between the stones are packed with sand, beetle wings, and the occasional ancient toe ring. You find one and hold it up. A nearby cleaner shakes her head and says, "That's the 5th this week. People must have danced a lot." Halfway down the causeway, you're joined by a small team of girls carrying jugs of clean water. They're responsible for rinsing. Their process is delicate. Pour, pause, wipe, pour again. One of them sings while she works, an old temple song about apsaras dancing in the rain. The words are soft and watery, and you find yourself humming along even though you don't know the tune. Then a gust of wind kicks up, sending dust flying. Everyone ducks, the buckets wobble. A small whirlwind forms near the centre of the causeway and just sits there, spinning gently like the temple itself is trying to shake off a sneeze. One of the girls mutters, "That's a sign." No one explains what kind. You pretend not to worry. After the wind settles, a supervisor strolls by. Not the feather hat one. This one wears a belt with dozens of keys, none of which seem to open anything. He inspects your section, nods vaguely, and hands you a small cloth bundle. Inside is a special rag embroidered with a red thread. It's used for sacred zones only, like the inner sanctum. You gulp. You're being promoted. Kind of. The inner sanctum is quieter, colder somehow, even though it's still exposed to the sun through open stone windows. The carvings are finer here, more delicate. You move carefully, wiping away the faint haze of dust from a statue's brow, gently brushing cobwebs from an ancient lintel. Everything echoes. Your own breath feels too loud. You kneel before a shrine, unsure what to clean. A soft voice behind you says, "Use your hands." It's the elder from earlier, the one with the tamarind paste. She kneels beside you, dampens a cloth with her breath, and begins wiping the base of the statue in slow, circular motions. You mimic her. The stone feels different here, smoother, heavier, like it remembers more than it wants to say. When you're done, she nods once, stands, and walks away without a word. You remain kneeling for a moment, not because you're tired, but because it feels like the right thing to do. Outside, the sun is slipping lower. Shadows stretch long across the temple grounds. The air smells like incense again. Someone's preparing for the evening offering. You stretch your arms, your back popping like old bamboo, and return your broom to the rack by the wall. Another day done. You glance back at the temple as you leave. The stones look cleaner, sharper, as if they've inhaled, just slightly, with relief. Then a monkey hurls a mango pit from a roof beam and nails you squarely in the shoulder. You sigh. It'll all need cleaning again tomorrow. The next morning, you return before the sun even considers waking up. The jungle fog is still low and heavy, blanketing the paths like an old silk scarf. Your breath comes out in faint puffs, surprisingly cool for a place that turns into a kiln by noon. You can't see the temple towers yet, but you can feel them, rising in the mist like sleeping giants. You're assigned to pollen duty. You didn't even know that was a job. But apparently for 3 months out of the year, the temple grounds become a slow-motion explosion of yellow. The reason? A flowering tree the locals call rumdual. Beautiful? Yes. Fragrant? Definitely. But when those petals start to fall, along with clouds of powder-fine pollen, you might as well be sweeping a field of breadcrumbs in a hurricane. The boy in charge of pollen patrol today is about 12 years old and already more competent than most adults. He carries 2 rakes made from bundled reeds, one shorter for stairs, one longer for walls. You join him on the terrace above the eastern gallery, where the rumduol trees are in full show-off mode. "Start at the edges," he says, gesturing with a rake like a tiny general. "If you start in the middle, it just spreads again." You nod obediently, already sneezing. The pollen isn't just everywhere, it's in everything. In cracks, on ledges, inside bowls, and under statues' noses. Some of the dancers carved into the walls look like they've developed golden beards. You sweep and sweep, but the slightest breeze undoes it all. You try wetting the cloth. Bad idea. Now the pollen just sticks, forming a yellow glue that laughs at you. The boy doesn't seem fazed. He sings while he works, tapping his rake to the beat, and at one point says without turning, "One time we cleaned this whole terrace before the king's visit. Took 30 people. Then the wind blew it all back in 10 minutes. He grins. So now we clean slower. You take that advice to heart. At one point you pause to watch a line of ants parade through a crack in the wall. They're carrying pollen too, tiny yellow flecks like stolen gold. You wonder if the gods care? Probably not. Probably too busy laughing. Eventually you shift to the upper galleries, which present their own brand of chaos, lintels. Those decorative ledges above doorways, once carved with intricate floral motifs and mythical beasts, are now catch-all trays for every kind of temple debris. Lichen, twigs, bird feathers, and, apparently, lost jewellery. Your colleague, an older woman, with a permanent smirk and forearms like chisels, shows you how to check each lintel without knocking down anything sacred. She taps the stone lightly with a stick and listens. If the sound is hollow, something's hiding inside. First lintel, moss. Second lintel, a bird's nest and one very surprised baby gecko. Third lintel, a long dried garland, now just a ring of brown twine and brittle petals. From New Year, she says, gently brushing it free. Or maybe a wedding. Or maybe someone just had a lot of flowers and too much time. You reach a particularly tall doorway and spot something shiny wedged in the stone. You stretch up, balancing on your toes, and carefully ease it free. A ring. It's simple, bronze, slightly warped, but with a small red stone still lodged in the setting. You hold it out. Earrings, she corrects. They always lose one. Must have leaned in for a wish. She wraps it in cloth and tucks it into a pocket sewn into her sash. We keep them. Someone might come back for it, even if it's been 100 years. Later that morning, you're sent to help clean the outer cloisters, a set of narrow corridors with arched windows and echoing acoustics. It's cooler here, but the dust is thick. A team of women has already started, moving in rhythm like they've done this 1,000 times. One scrubs, one wipes, one sweeps. You fall into the pattern. As you work, someone tells a story. Long ago, a queen once walked these halls every morning at sunrise barefoot alone. She would touch each pillar as she passed, whispering prayers. One day, she vanished. No one ever found her. But the pillars, some still feel warm at dawn. It's a lovely story and completely unverifiable. So, of course, historians argue about it. Some think it's legend. Others think it was just a priestess. Some even claim the queen was actually a visiting dignitary who got lost and never made it to the breakfast line. Either way, it makes you look at the corridor differently. You brush a hand along the stone, just in case. Then someone lets out a quiet, "Oh, a monkey. Again, key. Again. This one's older, grumpier, and currently perched on a stone naga, pulling yellow flower petals out of a bowl and flinging them onto your freshly swept floor. You freeze. The monkey freezes. For a moment, it's a standoff. Then it bares its teeth, grabs the entire bowl, and hurls it like a discus into the corridor. Chaos. The team groans. Someone chases after it with a broom. Someone else yells, "That was the main offering, you hairy little demon!" The monkey disappears into the rafters. You sigh and begin sweeping the petals. Again. By midday, the corridors are clean. Well, clean enough. You've learned that clean, in temple terms, is never really finished. It's just a state of grace, brief and elusive, like trying to dry your clothes during monsoon season. You regroup under the temple's central tree for lunch. A breeze picks up, rustling the rumdual blossoms. More pollen drifts down. Everyone sighs. One of the elders laughs. It's never done, but it's worth doing. And somehow you believe her. Because every sweep, every scrub, every sneezed-away handful of pollen, it's not just maintenance, it's memory, it's care, it's the quiet love that holds stone upright when time tries to melt it. As you lean back against the tree, face dappled with shadow and gold dust, you think, Maybe tomorrow you'll ask to clean the inner sanctum again, or maybe gutters, or maybe lintels. It doesn't matter, you'll be back. The next morning begins not with sunlight, but with mud. A night storm has rolled through, soaking the temple grounds, and now everything is damp, slick, and slightly steamy. The air smells like wet stone, rotting petals, and frog breath. Your bare feet sink slightly into the red clay path as you approach the western gate, where today's assignment awaits. The task? Drain dredging. You're not thrilled. Drains at Angkor aren't modern pipes. They're stone-lined channels carved beneath the floors and courtyards, designed centuries ago to funnel away rainwater. In theory, it's genius. In practice, they clog constantly, and the only way to clean them is to climb inside with a hand hook and a sense of humour. You meet your teammates, 3 wiry teens with basket hats and an elderly man who looks like he could outscrub the entire army. He hands you a dull metal hook with a wooden handle. "Try not to scream," he says, smiling. The frogs hate it. The first step is removing the stone lids. They're massive and heavy, each one a foot square and slick with lichen. It takes 3 people to lift one, and when you finally do, a waft of sour, ancient air hits your nose. You gag. The others don't flinch. Inside the drain, black muck, crumbling leaves, bits of cloth, flower stems, and, yes, a frog glaring at you like you've just burst into his living room uninvited. You get to work, scooping the sludge into a woven basket using your hands, your hook, and a complete lack of self-preservation. The sludge is cold, sticky, and full of surprises. You pull out a piece of sandalwood, half-rotted. A coin, its edges worn smooth. A carved bead shaped like a lotus seed. "From last month's ceremony," one of the boys says, peering into your basket. "Or last century, hard to tell." He's not joking. Drain cleaning is slow and slippery. You crawl along the trench, shifting your weight carefully to avoid falling in face first. Every few meters, someone yells, "Found another!" and another stone lid is heaved aside. Eventually, you stop caring what's in the sludge. You just move, scoop, pass the basket, move again. But then something strange. Your hook catches on something solid. Not stone, not wood. You tug hard, and up comes a rectangular lump wrapped in oilcloth. Everyone freezes. The elder leans in, peels back the cloth, and reveals a small stone carving of a god, worn, moss-covered, but unmistakably sacred. "Offerings fall in," he murmurs. "Sometimes they were meant to." You clean it gently with the water from your flask, and he tucks it into a sling across his chest. This one goes back to the shrine. No ceremony, just a quiet nod. And the work resumes. By mid-morning your arms ache, your legs are shaking, your knees are mud-slick, and your hands smell like fermented leaves. Still the drains are clearing. The water runs easier now, glistening under the flicker of temple light. You begin to feel, dare you say it, accomplished, until you reach that section. The corner drain. No one likes it. It's narrow, half-collapsed, and believed to be home to a very territorial lizard. Your hook hits something soft, then something hisses. You launch backward, scraping your elbow on stone, and the boys howl with laughter. "It's just a gecko," one of them says, holding up a palm-sized, puffed-up little reptile with eyes like wet marbles. "She lives there, probably older than the temple." You suspect he's right. Eventually the drains are done. The lids go back on, carefully, because crushed toes are forever, and you all sit in the shade, sipping cool water and passing around sticky rice wrapped in banana leaves. You've earned it. But the day isn't over. Next up, a visit to the children's cleaning grounds. You follow a path that winds behind the main shrine and into a quieter area, a courtyard scattered with small shrine models, miniature stupas, child-sized altars, tiny naga rails no higher than your hip. This is where the temple kids train. They start young, 6, sometimes younger. Too small to scrub the full temple, they learn here, on scaled-down models using tools made from twigs and bits of cloth. As you arrive, you see a girl no older than 5, carefully dusting the knee of a miniature Buddha with a bundle of rice straw. She's crouched, tongue peeking from the corner of her mouth in concentration. Her brother is nearby, attempting to polish a palm-sized Apsara's headdress with beetle shell paste and what looks like an old sock. He's not doing a great job, but the intent is there. A woman oversees them all, humming as she straightens flower offerings and corrects postures. "Gentle," she tells one boy. "She's not a statue, she's a story." You're not sure what that means, but it sounds wise, so you pretend to understand. You help one of the children sweep the walkway, and he peppers you with questions. Have you climbed the tower yet? Do gods ever laugh? What happens if you sneeze during prayer? You answer as best you can. Yes, maybe. And they probably just bless you and move on. Historians still argue whether this kind of early temple labor was child exploitation or education. But here, the kids seem content, proud even. There's no fear, just focus, and a sense that cleaning isn't a punishment. It's a form of belonging. A way of saying, this is mine too. By late afternoon, the light begins to turn golden. The trees around the courtyard shift in the breeze, scattering yellow petals like lazy snow. One lands on your shoulder, you don't brush it off. You help tidy up the tools, tiny brooms, half-sized rags, and a bamboo tray full of used polished cloth. Then the children gather in a circle and sing a short song. You don't know the words, but you recognize the tune. It's the same lullaby you heard from the older women yesterday. It echoes off the stone walls like a whisper from the past. You leave the courtyard quietly, heart strangely full. Back at the main complex, the sun dips low. Workers begin gathering tools, stacking baskets, wringing out cloths. The elder with the feather hat appears, frowns at a dusty corner, and mutters something about monkeys again. Everyone nods, pretending not to roll their eyes. Tomorrow will bring new dust, new moss, new guano. But for now you exhale, lean against the temple wall, and let yourself feel still. By now you know the rhythm. The temple breathes and you breathe with it. Morning begins with fog and the soft shuffling of sandals. Afternoon brings the clatter of buckets, the scrape of broom bristles, and the occasional shriek when someone steps in something warm and squishy that definitely wasn't there 5 minutes ago. But today is different. Today is the start of the monsoon season. You wake to a sky so grey it could have been carved from ash. The air hangs low, swollen with humidity. The birds are quieter, the frogs louder, and the temple walls sweat long before you do. You've been assigned to what the team jokingly calls slip patrol. Your job is simple. Make sure no one, including visiting monks, barefoot tourists, or highly judgmental cats, dies from slipping on temple stairs, slick with rain, moss, and bat droppings. It begins with a bucket. The water is dragged from a runoff basin behind the north wing. It's thick with silt and smells like old copper. You stir in a mixture made of crushed coconut husk, tamarind juice, and, this is not a joke, banana peels. It adds grip, the boy next to you explains, and shine, also attracts less ants than sugar. You want to question this, but you've learned better by now. With a handful of the mixture you begin the process. Scrub, rinse, scrub again. The stairs are particularly cruel, each one slightly crooked, slick as soap, and flanked by carved nagas that look far too smug about how many people they've watched fall. You take your time, crouched low, using a rag tied around your hand like a glove. One section at a time, you work the mixture into the stone, watching the greenish sheen dull into a dry, safer texture. You stand to stretch your back, mistake, and nearly lose your footing. A girl behind you cackles. "Try walking like a duck," she says, demonstrating a squat-footed shuffle. "Better than a tumble. You try it. It works." Halfway through the western stairway, the rain begins, soft at first, then heavier, pounding the leaves with a rhythm like impatient drumming. Within minutes, the walkways flood, the courtyards shine, and the carved drain spouts, shaped like angry lions, begin spitting out muddy streams. And the moss? It multiplies. That's the monsoon gift. Slime. Thin, nearly invisible, and extremely enthusiastic about sending you horizontal. You switch tactics. Out comes the coarse scrubbing fibre made from palm husks bound with vine. The friction is intense. Your arms burn. Your knees ache. But slowly, the stairs begin to feel walkable. Beside you, an older man slips and lands with a thud that echoes through the hall. Everyone freezes. He lies there, blinking at the rain. Then he groans, sits up, and mutters. That Naga is definitely laughing. Someone offers him a ginger candy. He accepts with dignity. By late morning, puddles are forming in strange places, corners that have no right being wet, altars with slight leaks above them, even the armpits of certain statues. A younger boy is dispatched with a ladle to scoop water from the lap of a meditating figure. Again, he grumbles. She always floods. No one knows why this one statue leaks. Historians still argue whether it's poor design or divine tears. The banana peel polish holds, for the most part. Around midday, the cloud cover lifts just enough for sunlight to filter through in great white shafts. It hits the whetstone like silver. The temple transforms. Every surface gleams. Every carved face sparkles with beads of water. Every puddle reflects the sky like a broken mirror. And then someone slips again. It's a monk this time. His robes billow as he tumbles, landing with an oof and a dignity-destroying splash. No injuries, just soaked pride. Everyone winces in sympathy. "Monsoon season," someone says, shrugging. Later, you help spread coconut husk dust across a terrace where pilgrims gather. It soaks up the slickness and leaves a fine brown coating that looks like cinnamon but smells like compost. As you scatter it with your hands, an older woman stops beside you. "This is the worst temple season," she says, wringing out her scarf, "but the most beautiful." She's right. You step back and look around. The moss is vibrant green. The carvings shine. The jungle pulses with life. Rain drips from stone gutters shaped like lotus petals. Birds splash in puddles on sacred platforms. Everything breathes. And for once, the temple doesn't look old. It looks alive. By late afternoon, the rain slows, the puddles shrink, the air thickens, and steam begins to rise from the stone like the temple is exhaling. You help wipe down the main altar platform, the cloth in your hands soaking up moisture that smells like ancient incense and wet leaves. One of the girls hums an old monsoon song as she works. It's about frogs being the messengers of the gods. You wonder what message they're delivering today. Probably something like, "Your floor is still wet." At sunset, you climb the east stair to check the final steps. They're clean, dryish, acceptably non-deadly. You plant your broom upright beside the Naga statue and lean against the stone, letting your sore muscles melt a little. The sky is streaked with orange, the temple glows, and as the last visitors wander out, someone behind you slips in the mud and lands flat on their back. Of course. You sigh. Tomorrow you'll polish the steps again. Tomorrow the moss will grow back. Tomorrow the frogs will return to the drain pipes, and the banana polish will need a refresh. But tonight, the temple is clean enough to rest. The morning after a monsoon is always the same, quiet, soggy, and full of surprises. You step into the temple grounds with your sandals already wet. The air feels like soup. Everything drips, leaves, stones, even your thoughts. You make your way toward the eastern gallery, where today's task is both sacred and slightly horrifying. Today, you're on pillar duty, specifically the bathtub columns. Now, to clarify, no one actually bathes in these columns. That would be weird. But the tops of the temple's massive pillars, those towering sandstone supports that hold up entire galleries, are hollow. And when it rains, those hollows fill with water. And when water sits, things grow, things fall in, things ferment. You meet your partner for the day, a wiry, middle-aged woman named Dara, who has cleaned more pillars than you've had hot meals. She hands you a long, flexible pole with a cloth-wrapped end. "Don't drop it inside," she warns. "Last time someone did that, we had to fish it out with a lizard net." You follow her to the first site, the northern colonnade, A long row of 20-foot-high pillars, so thick with carved patterns, they look like coiled vines turned to stone. You look up and wince. The tops are brimming with dark water, leaves, and something squirmy. "Guano," Dara says, deadpan. "Also frogs, sometimes coins. Once I found a sandal." The cleaning process involves climbing a rickety bamboo scaffold tied together with vines and optimism. You ascend slowly, pole balanced on your shoulder, praying that nothing with teeth lives in pillar number 1. At the top, the smell hits you first. Sour, earthy, with a hint of roasted banana peel. You insert the pole, stir gently, and begin to siphon out the murky water, letting it spill into a clay basin below. Plop, plop, slosh. Halfway through, a frog leaps out and lands on your chest. You scream. Dara howls with laughter from below. You regain composure, barely, and finish draining the column. Once empty, you scrub the interior with a dried coconut husk tied to the end of a reed. It makes a squeaky sound that echoes oddly inside the stone, like you're giving the temple a dental cleaning. When you descend, arms shaking, Dara claps you on the back. 17 more. You blink. 17? She smiles. Some are worse. Indeed they are. One contains a decaying flower arrangement, probably from a ceremony a month ago, now home to a colony of ants. Another has a petrified pigeon. "Don't ask," Dara mutters, wrapping it in cloth and placing it gently in a basket marked offerings, or maybe just trash. Historians still debate whether these hollow pillars were intentionally designed for water collection, structural reasons, or by accident. No one agrees. But the janitors? They have no time for theory. They have buckets to empty. You reach a particularly narrow column near the eastern shrine. The scaffolding here is more precarious, the climb trickier. But at the top, you find something unexpected. A small bowl, perfectly intact, painted with faded red spirals. Inside, a cluster of lotus petals, slightly rotted, floating in clean water. You stare. It's beautiful. You call down to Dara, who shades her eyes and squints. "Someone's offering," she says. "They must have tossed it up there during prayer. Happens more than you think." You don't clean it, not this one. Instead, you bow your head slightly, as if to say, "I see you." Then you descend. Later in the day, you take a break near the southern cloister and meet a man whose job is far stranger. He maintains the temple's stone gutters. You didn't know gutters could be sacred. They're shaped like lotus petals, he explains, pointing to a long stone groove carved into the eaves. See, curves inward, symbolic. Water flows through it like purity. He says this while elbow-deep in a wet clump of moss and lizard dung. His cleaning tool is exquisite, a reed brush bent at the tip, soft enough to caress stone, firm enough to dislodge ancient filth. You help him flush the gutters with ladles of water, watching dark streaks slither away down the slope. A small fish skids past. He shrugs. Happens. Nearby, a group of women gathers beneath a portico, each holding a slender tube of bamboo. They're today's sky sweepers, specialists in dusting the high rafters and lintels where cobwebs gather like gossip. They move in slow, graceful arcs, tapping the stone with soft brushes wrapped in silk. One begins to sing, and soon the others join in. It's not loud, just a low hum that matches the rhythm of their sweeping. The melody floats upward and settles into the corners, as if tucking the temple in for a nap. You join in, hesitant at first, but no one laughs. The song is about rain and time and the gods who forget to clean behind their ears. By late afternoon, the sky shifts again, more rain maybe. The light turns blue-grey, and the temple glows faintly in the gloom. You help stack the scaffolds, tie off buckets, and rinse the rags in a stone basin shaped like a naga's open mouth. One of the temple caretakers walks by, nods at your soaked clothes, and offers a small packet wrapped in banana leaf. Inside, candied ginger, sweet and hot. You pop a piece in your mouth and feel your muscles unclench just a little. Before leaving, you glance up at the tallest pillar, its top still hidden in shadow. Somewhere up there, frogs croak, bats flutter, And maybe, just maybe, a god rests his elbow in a pool of rainwater, amused at your efforts. You bow slightly, just in case. This morning, you don't start with a broom. You start with a pollen scoop. And not just any scoop either. It's a hand-carved wooden pan that looks like a cross between a shallow wok and a broken guitar, tied to a long bamboo handle with fraying twine and generations of quiet frustration. Because today, your assignment is, quite literally, picking up after the trees. The rumdu-old trees, in particular, are in full bloom again. You remember them from earlier in the week, but somehow, overnight, they've doubled their effort. Yellow petals blanket the courtyard in thick, fuzzy layers that whisper under your sandals. The scent is heavy and sweet, like overripe honey. It's lovely until you try to walk on it. You begin near the western shrine, gently scooping petal piles into shallow baskets. It's meditative work, scoop, dump, scoop, dump. But as the sun rises, the petals start to stick. The morning dew has turned the soft blanket into a gooey, slippery mess. You drag your basket around like a medieval janitor with a floral obsession, mumbling to yourself about why sacred trees must shed like divine golden retrievers. Then someone calls your name. A boy, no more than 10, waving excitedly from the side of the gallery. "Come see," he shouts. You jog over, half expecting another monkey theft or someone stuck in a drain. But no, it's worse. It's the lintels, more specifically the lintels above the east wall. Massive, carved slabs that run across doorways and windows, almost too high to notice. They've somehow caught the full brunt of the wind-blown blossoms. Thick, yellow drifts hang from the carvings like oversized eyebrows. And behind those, nesting birds, a whole row of them, pigeons, doves, possibly a sarcastic parrot, all nestled among the lintel crests, peering down like feathery aristocrats in a very dusty palace. You sigh. There's only one way to fix this. The ladder. Not just any ladder, of course. This one is ancient in its own right. Bamboo rungs tied with palm fibre, worn smooth by decades of anxious feet. You and the boy hoist it up and lean it carefully against the central pillar. He holds it steady. You climb and climb and climb. At the top, you reach the first lintel. It's covered in pollen, feathers, and something uncomfortably soft. You brace yourself with one hand and begin brushing the top clean using a rag tied to a long stick. You sweep gently, trying not to wake the birds. One coos indignantly, another flaps and sends a mini avalanche of petals into your face. You sneeze loudly. The entire row of birds takes flight in a fury of wings and flapping. You lose your balance for a moment, just enough for your foot to slip a rung. For one glorious second, you dangle in midair, holding the lintel like it's your favourite cousin at a wedding. Then you recover, heart pounding, and continue. "Careful," the boy yells. "One man fell last year, only broke his broom." You're not sure if that's comforting. As you descend, now covered in a fine layer of feathers, pollen, and regret, someone else calls out, "We need a scooper." You're sent to the outer walkway, where the stone balustrades, carved like rows of coiled serpents, have filled with petals. The challenge isn't scooping them, but doing so without damaging the delicate carvings. You use a palm broom with split ends, brushing carefully along the naga tails. One of them has a small offering bowl resting between its coils, filled with dry rice and a stick of incense now sagging from the moisture. You move it gently, sweep the petals away, and place it back. "Good," says a voice behind you. It's one of the older women, the one who seems to appear whenever you're about to make a mistake. She nods approvingly, then points to a far corner. "See that? That's your next job." You squint. It's a gutter. Of course it is. But not just any gutter. This one is lined with carved lotus petals, each filled with a pool of yellow water and a floating layer of, yes, more pollen. The women call it the lotus gut, and it's apparently infamous. You kneel beside it and begin scooping the water with a coconut ladle, careful not to disturb the petal rims. Each scoop reveals more grime beneath, silt, flower pulp, and the occasional drowned beetle. The water smells faintly sweet, faintly sour, and just faintly like something you shouldn't be kneeling in. By now the sun is high, the air shimmers with heat, the temple stones radiate warmth beneath your hands. You pause, sit back, and wipe your brow with your scarf. A gecko skitters across the wall beside you. Somewhere nearby, someone hums the work song again, the one about the dancing apsaras and their sparkling hair. You hum along this time. In the late afternoon, the team gathers in the main hall. The petals have been cleared from the walkways, the lintels are mostly clean, the birds have returned naturally, and the gutters flow freely again. You take a moment to lean against a pillar, hand resting on the cool stone. The temple feels calmer, like it's exhaled. Someone walks by and places a small garland of fresh flowers on the altar. Another lights a stick of incense. The scent drifts slowly into the corridor, mingling with the warmth, the dust, the fading sweetness of pollen. You sit for a while in silence. Not because you're tired, though you absolutely are, but because the temple is quiet and you don't want to break it. Just before sunset, the boy from earlier passes by, his scoop slung over his shoulder like a weapon. He waves, you wave back. And for a brief, odd moment, you imagine this isn't a temple at all, but a living thing, something that breathes, listens, even smiles when its walls are touched with care. Then a gust of wind kicks up. Pollen flurries through the air like confetti at the world's most humid parade. You sigh. You'll be back tomorrow. You arrive at the temple the next day with a stiff back, a scratch on your elbow you don't remember getting, and the vague smell of tamarind soap lingering behind your ears. The petals are still falling, of course they are, but today you've been pulled onto a different detail, one that sounds deceptively simple. Ledge duty. At first you think it might involve dusting off window sills, maybe clearing the base of a statue or two. But no, ledge duty, it turns out, refers to the maintenance of every horizontal surface that isn't a floor, which includes, but is not limited to, door frames, statue shoulders, gallery cornices, stair landings, and, rather dramatically, the forearms of giant stone guardians whose only job is to look menacing in bas-relief while collecting grime. You're issued a stiff palm bristle brush, a woven shoulder mat, and a ladder that definitely has opinions about your weight. You're joined by two temple regulars. One, a short woman named Vannery, who carries 3 brushes in her belt like daggers, and the other, an elderly man who doesn't speak much but wears a bamboo hat the size of a dinner table and has absolutely zero fear of heights. Your first target is a series of window ledges above the southern corridor, each carved in intricate patterns, each collecting leaves, ash, bird feathers, and in one case what appears to be the chewed stem of a sugarcane stalk. The higher you climb, the more oddities you uncover. A button, a small toy elephant, a folded paper fan with half a poem still written on it in faded ink. Offerings, Vannery says, shrugging. Or maybe someone just got tired. You move from ledge to ledge, gently brushing debris into your mat. One ledge holds a single, perfect mango pit, carefully balanced in the corner. Another has an entire squirrel nest, tucked behind a chunk of broken sandstone. "Don't disturb it," the old man says, voice soft as rust. He's been there since last festival. There's something almost voyeuristic about ledge duty. You're peering into forgotten corners of the temple, places no pilgrim ever looks, places where time slows down, collects like dust. Some ledges feel warm from the sun, others cool and damp. One is so narrow you wonder how anything ever landed there. Until you find a single clay bead, worn smooth as glass, resting like it always belonged. And then there's the lintel above the northeast gate. It's high, really high. The ladder creaks as you climb, Vannery holding the base with one hand and chewing on a piece of sugarcane, like it's her lunch and her opinion of your balance. You reach the top. It's not just dusty, it's sticky. A thick paste of old incense drippings, flower residue, candle wax, and somehow sand. It takes real scrubbing to break it loose, the bristles rasping against the ancient stone. Your fingers ache. Sweat drips into your eyes. And then, nestled in the corner, you find something gleaming. A ring, thin, bronze, a single, dull red gem set in the center. You hold it up. Another one, you call down. Vannery looks up and sighs. Lintel ring. How many do people lose? Enough to build a statue wearing all of them, she replies, but only on one hand. You wrap it carefully in cloth and slide it into the offering pouch tied to your belt. The belief here is simple. What's lost in the temple stays in the temple. Unless it's fruit. That goes to the monkeys. Back on the ground, your knees tremble slightly from the descent. You stretch, brush stone dust off your sleeves, and take a sip of water. The sky is beginning to cloud over again, more rain likely. You're moved to the west vestibule, where a long, flat frieze lines the top of the inner gallery wall. It's covered in stories, carved scenes from ancient epics, warriors in chariots, elephants in battle, dancers spinning with arms raised like water. The detail is staggering, but up close it's clear the carvings are dimmed by a film of soot and time. Your job is to reveal them carefully. You begin with a soft rag dampened in herbal oil. It smells of lemongrass and something minty. You rub slowly, following the contours of each carved figure. As the grime lifts, the lines emerge, a cheekbone, a sword, a string of pearls, a foot poised mid-step. And then next to the head of a royal figure, something etched, in smaller script, not part of the carving. Not quite modern either. A few words in ancient Khmer, scratched lightly. Vannery leans in to see. Lover's name, she guesses. People used to leave them here. Graffiti, you ask. She shrugs. History. Historians still argue whether these markings should be preserved or erased. Some say they ruin the original art. Others believe they are part of the story now, layers of devotion and mischief carved into eternity. You don't weigh in, you just clean around the name, careful not to smudge it further. As the day winds down, you return to the statue gallery. Here, dozens of deities stand in long rows, arms folded, smiles serene, brows perpetually skeptical. Each statue must be cleaned, again. Because moss never sleeps. You leaps, you brush the shoulders, wipe the feet, polish the headdresses with a cloth dampened in beetle shell oil. And the dust? It always comes back. But today, it's less about the dirt and more about the act. The hands that do the work, the respect in each movement, the silent promise that this temple, this aging, crumbling, stubborn monument to time and stone, will still be standing, still be cleaned, still be loved. By dusk you're sore, smudged, and oddly content. The ledges are clean, the gods are dusted. The petals have returned, of course they have, but the temple breathes easy again. So do you. The temple wakes slower today. There's no breeze, no bird call, just the distant groan of jungle trees adjusting their limbs and the faint drip of last night's rainwater slipping from lotus gutters into puddles that haven't yet evaporated. You move through the outer gates with the other cleaners, each of you a shadow beneath the weight of another long shift. Your task today, however, isn't petals or ledges or guano-stuffed columns, it's pollen scooping. Again, yes, again, because just when you think the trees have stopped shedding, they double down like a toddler with a glitter shaker. The result, a courtyard, carpeted ankle-deep in yellow fuzz, floating in puddles, clinging to carvings and forming gentle, fragrant dunes along the temple's thresholds. You're handed a rake and pointed toward the north gallery. Don't fight it, the supervisor says. Just redirect it, like guiding ducks. You aren't sure whether he's joking. The raking starts slowly. Each push gathers pollen into small mounds that you scoop into flat trays made of stitched palm leaf. It's peaceful, in a way, rhythmic. The only sounds are brushing, the occasional sneeze, and the low coo of a bird sitting somewhere you cannot see. Then the wind picks up, and the pollen lifts. You watch in horror as your neatly piled dunes scatter back across the stone in a golden blizzard. One lands on a shrine you just finished wiping down. Another coats a damp bench so thoroughly it looks upholstered. Someone swears softly. Another person simply lies down on the floor and lets the pollen cover them like a blanket. You try again. This time, you wet the path lightly before sweeping, an old trick taught to you by a girl who swears she saw a ghost priest teach it to her in a dream. It works, mostly. At least the piles stay put until you can scoop them away. Nearby, an older woman is muttering to herself as she rakes along the base of a statue. The problem with pollen, she says without looking up, is that it never stops. Even the gods cough during blossom season. You believe her? After a short break, during which you try to drink water without accidentally sipping a floating petal, you're asked to assist in the alcove cleanings. The alcoves are narrow, carved recesses that dot the temple's inner halls. Some are shrines, some are storage, some are, well, no one quite agrees. A few still hold statues or incense bowls. Others are empty except for dust, spiderwebs and echoes. The one you're assigned to is especially deep, tall enough to walk into, just wide enough to bump both elbows simultaneously if you try to turn. You duck inside, carrying a small oil lamp and a cloth-wrapped toolkit, brush, rag, water jar, and an herbal scrub paste made from salt, ash, and something that smells suspiciously like ginger candy. The stone here is cool, undisturbed. You brush the walls slowly, working around the faded outlines of what once might have been murals. Every now and then a flake of colour, ochre red, deep indigo, curls into your hand and disappears. You pause often, not from exhaustion, but from awe. The silence in this alcove feels older than the air. Behind the shrine pedestal, you find something strange. Carved into the back wall is a square depression, no bigger than a book. Within it, a tightly sealed stone jar, its lid worn smooth. You call for the supervisor. He peers in, nods, and says, "One of the forgotten ones." "What's in it?" No one opens them. Could be ashes, could be scrolls, could be lunch. He gives a shrug, so casual it must be practiced, and adds, "We clean around them." So you do. You gently wipe the jar, brushing away the centuries of soot. The stone underneath gleams faintly. You light a small stick of incense and leave it there, not as an offering exactly, but as a hello. When you emerge, blinking in the light, you're greeted by a sudden burst of wind. And more pollen, of course. The afternoon is spent on doorframe duty. These aren't your average doorframes. Khmer temple entrances are layered, tall and carved with lines so fine they look stitched. Each one frames not just a doorway but a moment. You work your way around them, brushing out old dirt from their creases, wiping off bat stains from upper corners, and rediscovering tiny carvings of monkeys stealing fruit, birds in flight, dancers mid-spin, and the best part? Rings. Yes, another one. Wedged between the stone blocks above a western gate is a ring with two tiny serpents twisted around each other. You almost miss it. Just a glint in the stone, but it's there. You carefully pry it loose with a cloth-wrapped stick and hand it off to the woman collecting temple returns. She slides it into a box already rattling with at least 5 others. Lost during blessings, she says. Or maybe thrown on purpose. Some people make wishes with jewellery. Does it work? She smirks. Depends on the ring. As dusk approaches, the cleaning teams begin to drift toward the central causeway. The final pass. Everyone with a broom, a brush, or a rag takes one last swipe at something. Benches, steps, shrine bases. You pick up your rake one more time and begin clearing the last wind-blown pollen patch from the edge of the gallery. It doesn't matter that more will fall overnight. You do it anyway. That's the secret here. You're not cleaning to finish. You're cleaning because it needs to be done, because these stones hold stories. And those stories deserve to breathe. As the sun sinks behind the trees, the temple glows gold, not just from the light, from care, from hands like yours. You arrive to the sound of voices this time, not prayers, not the quiet hum of cleaning songs, but laughter. Peeking around the northeast gallery, you see them. 4 women perched atop a low wall beside a drainage path, long reed brushes in hand, and buckets lined up like sentinels. They are today's lotus gutter cleaners, and by the look of things, the job is equal parts labour and gossip. You've been assigned to join them. One of them, a tall woman named Sofa, beckons you over. "Bring your own bucket," she says with a grin, "and don't mind the frogs." You don't, at least not until one leaps directly into your path as if personally offended. You sidestep and kneel beside a long gutter carved with lotus petals, each one like a little bowl holding yesterday's rain, pollen, and possibly the dreams of 5 very sleepy ants. The job is methodical. Brush out the petal grooves, scoop out the water, flush the channels clean. The reed brushes are flexible and thin, perfect for tracing the gentle curves of each carved lotus. But it's not just cleaning, it's conversation. As you scrub, the women talk. They tell stories with the rhythm of long practice. Who brought a bad offering, which statue refused to stop weeping condensation, how someone lost a sandal and their temper during the last thunderstorm. One story is about a young novice monk who tried to climb the main tower barefoot, slipped, and claimed later that a Naga saved him. "Which Naga?" someone asks. "The sassy one," another replies, pointing toward the southern gate. You scrub harder to keep from laughing. Between jokes, there's real information too, tricks of the trade passed down like recipes. One woman shows you how to fold your rag so it fits perfectly into the lip of the gutter without fraying. Another explains how to spot a micro-crack in the stone before water damage sets in. And then someone points to a dark streak running from the gutter's edge into the wall. "See that?" Sofa says. "That's what happens when you skip cleaning during rain season. Water finds its own path, and it doesn't ask first." Historians still argue whether these lotus gutters were purely decorative or carefully engineered hydrological tools. Either way, they work, and they require relentless upkeep. Around mid-morning, you reach the end of the eastern gutter line and discover a blockage, a cluster of soggy leaves wrapped tightly around what looks like a melted candle. As you dig gently with the brush, you realize it's not wax, it's sugar. Sweetened rice, once part of an offering, now congealed into something between caramel and mortar. The women groan. "This is festival rot," one says. "It turns to stone if you don't catch it in time." You scrape carefully, letting the sludge fall into a basin. It smells oddly pleasant, jasmine and burnt sugar, but it clings to everything, your fingers, your brush, your dignity. Eventually, it's cleared. Water runs again, trickling smoothly from petal to petal, vanishing into a stone drain carved like a yawning lion's mouth. You sit back on your heels. Victory. Lunch is taken on the steps of a nearby shrine, under the shade of a frangipani tree. Sticky rice, pickled papaya, boiled peanuts wrapped in banana leaves. Someone shares a sweet coconut drink served in a bamboo tube. You sip gratefully, then sneeze. Pollen again. "Bless you," Sofa says, or blame the trees. You nod, unsure which it is. After lunch, the mood shifts. Clouds move in, the light softens. You're sent to assist with the internal basin patrol, cleaning the shallow, ceremonial water basins that line the inner halls. These stone bowls, carved directly into the floor or raised on carved pedestals, are deceptively tricky. They gather everything, dust, soot, candle wax, rain, and the occasional beetle with poor navigation skills. You clean each one by hand. The trick, you learn, is to swirl the water clockwise. That's the traditional direction. Cleansing, not disruptive. You dip a soft cloth into a bowl of herbal rinse and wipe the basin's edge, then pour it gently along the rim. One basin is particularly stubborn, dark stains around the edges. Wax hardened into grey clumps, a ring of dust as firm as chalk. You kneel beside it, scrub gently, and notice something odd, an engraving beneath the grime. Letters, not Khmer, Sanskrit. You call over a supervisor who squints, nods, and says, "Inscription from the early dynasty, prayer of protection." He leans closer. "You uncovered that? Been hidden for years?" You stare. The words, once cleaned, shimmer faintly in the low light. Faded, yes, but still present, still waiting. It's humbling. You finish the basin and sit beside it for a moment, watching as the last flecks of dust swirl and settle in the water. In the late afternoon, you're called to help clean the niche shrines, those shallow wall alcoves where tiny statues sit behind latticed stone. They're dim, often forgotten, but deeply loved. Each niche holds a small figure, usually no taller than your forearm. Some are Buddha, some are spirits. Some are so eroded, you only know they're sacred because someone keeps leaving jasmine flowers at their feet. You wipe each one gently with a damp cloth, polish the base with a bit of oil, check for loose petals, fallen ash, or, today, a small clay turtle someone has tucked behind a figurine's foot. Luck charm, someone says. You leave it there. By evening the gutters sparkle, the basins are clean, the laughter has faded into murmurs and yawns. The frangipani tree now sheds petals into an area you just swept, but no one minds. That's how it goes. You gather your tools, fold your cloths, rinse your brush, and before you leave, you walk once more along the lotus gutters. Water trickles gently. A frog hops across your path. The breeze carries the scent of warm stone and faraway incense. And the temple for now is content. This morning, you're handed a tool you've never seen before. It's long, narrow, shaped like a scoop made from polished teak, with a slight curve at the end and a small carved handle. You think it might be for soup. You're wrong. It's for drain dredging, again. But this time, it's not the big outer drains, the ones you slogged through before with sludge up to your ankles and frogs giving you the stink eye. No, this is interior drain duty, narrower, older, deeper, and somehow grosser. The stone channels you're assigned to today lie just beneath the floor slabs of the north gallery. You wouldn't know they're there if someone hadn't shown you the small trap doors carved flush into the floor, just wide enough for an arm, a scoop, and your sense of optimism. You kneel beside the first one. It's barely noticeable, a square outline in the stone with a small notch for lifting. You slide a flat chisel into the seam and pry it open. The lid groans, lifts, and immediately your nose regrets everything. An ancient, fermented scent escapes, part mildew, part old incense, part swamp-flavoured history. "Hold your breath," says Dara, appearing with a bundle of rags and a very large leaf. Or stuff this in your scarf, helps with the smell. It doesn't. Still you get to work. You lie flat, arm extended into the drain, using the teak scoop to draw up handful after handful of muck. It's slow going. The sludge is thicker here, paste-like, the sediment of centuries. Your hand scrapes along the channel bottom, bumping into unexpected textures, stone chips, dried flower stems, and something rubbery that you pray is a root. Sometimes the drain burps. You pretend it didn't. At one point, your scoop strikes something solid. You dig around it, careful not to push it farther down. Eventually, you pull out a tiny statue, about the size of your fist. It's worn, green with age, but still clearly a Buddha. "Offering that washed in," Dara murmurs. "That's not uncommon." She cleans it gently with a cloth and places it in a padded basket, already holding 2 cracked incense dishes and one very confused-looking terracotta mouse. "Why a mouse?" you ask. She shrugs. People ask for different things. The work continues, drain after drain. Some have standing water, cloudy, mosquito-laced puddles that slosh when you move. Others are bone-dry, but packed with ancient gunk like leaf mulch, old wax, and something flaky that might be fish scales or temple dandruff. You don't ask. One drain holds a surprise, a folded square of gold leaf, still glinting beneath a layer of slime. You lift it carefully, let the sun catch on its creased surface. "A wish," Dara says. "They write something on it, fold it up, drop it in the cracks. The gods are supposed to find it." "Do they?" "Depends on the drainage." You return to work. As you move to the next panel, a group of children passes by on their way to clean the miniature shrines again. One of them stops, peers into the open drain and asks, "Is it true someone once got stuck in there?" "Only halfway," Dara replies cheerfully. "We greased him with coconut oil and pulled." The child laughs. You try not to picture it. Later in the afternoon, the drains become tighter. Some of the floor slabs are misaligned, leaving only slivers of space to work through. You lie sideways, reaching in with your left hand, scooping blind. A few times your fingers close around something soft and wet, and you pretend it's a leaf. One channel reveals an ancient coin, black with oxidation. Not Khmer, Chinese. Dara looks over your shoulder and grins. Merchants left them during the tribute ceremonies for good luck, or so the priests told them. Historians still argue whether these offerings were genuine religious acts or clever tourist taxes. Probably both. By sunset, your arms are stained, your shirt soaked, and your knees patterned with indentations from the temple floor. But the channels are running clearer. You can see water moving, trickling from one end to the other like a vein through the temple's stone body. You close the lids gently. Each one clicks back into place like a puzzle piece. As the last light falls through the east-facing doorways, you and Dara sit under the awning of the inner cloister. She hands you a cup of rice water, lightly sweetened with sugarcane. You sip in silence. "I used to hate drain duty," she says finally. You glance at her, eyebrows raised. "But then I started thinking, every time someone lights a candle, pours water, says a prayer, it has to go somewhere, right?" She gestures at the stone beneath your feet. "This is where it goes." You nod slowly. "And maybe," she adds, "the gods don't listen from above. Maybe they listen from below, through all the things we think are waste." You sip again. The temple is quiet now. Somewhere, water drips gently through the freshly cleaned channel, whispering to stone in a language no one's spoken aloud in centuries. And just for a moment, you think you hear it answering back. The rain is already falling when you arrive. Not a storm, just that slow, steady drizzle that seeps into everything, turns the walkways to warm stone soup, and gives the temple carvings a glossy sheen like polished bronze. The mist curls around the towers and pillars, softening their outlines until the temple seems to float, half remembered, half dreamed. Today is training day, but not for you, for the kids. You're sent to the practice shrines again, those miniature versions of the real temple scattered behind the main structure like sacred dollhouses. Each one is carved with real care, tiny lintels, finger-sized Naga balustrades, and even scaled down stairs too narrow for adult feet. Here, young trainees learn to clean without endangering their backs, their fingers, or someone else's ancient eyebrow carving. Today, you're paired with a boy named Chan. He's maybe 7, thin as a broomstick, and full of opinions. His rag is neatly folded, his brush is worn to the handle. He takes one look at you and says, "Your elbows are dirty." You blink. He hands you a fresh cloth. "Try better." You do. He teaches you how to scrub the base of a miniature stupor without knocking over the offering dish, how to wipe lotus petals clockwise unless you want the spirits to get dizzy, how to shoo ants away with a feather, not because it's effective, but because they don't like the tickle. You show him how to polish corners using the tip of a coconut husk. He nods gravely, as if receiving ancient wisdom, then promptly improves on your technique by tying a string to the husk so he can swing it like a pendulum. "Faster," he explains. Nearby, 3 other kids are cleaning a low altar. One girl hums the cleaning song under her breath. Another gently sweeps flower petals into a basket shaped like a turtle. The third pauses every few minutes to whisper something to the statue, then bows before continuing. "What's she saying?" you ask. Chan shrugs. "Telling jokes. Statues get bored." You believe him. By mid-morning, the trainer arrives, an elderly woman with a walking stick and a gaze that could clean walls by itself. She walks slowly between the miniature shrines, correcting posture, inspecting rags, lifting a carved monkey tail to check for dust. She stops beside you. "Too wet," she says, nodding at your cloth. You nod back, unsure if she means the rag, the shrine, or your soul. Still, you wring it out and keep going. After a while, the rain lightens. Steam rises from the stone. The smell of wet earth mixes with that faint, sweet incense, always lingering in the temple air. The kids keep working, focused, cheerful, often trading tools mid-task like it's a game. A girl with braids wipes a tiny lintel while balancing on one, shing on one foot. A boy uses a cloth-wrapped stick to poke gently into a carved niche barely bigger than a mango. At one point, Chan hands you a smooth pebble, palm-sized and warm. "For good luck," he says. "Does it work?" He nods. Until it doesn't. Later, the trainer calls them all into a circle. They kneel on woven mats and receive their feedback, softly, respectfully, as if the statues themselves are listening. Some are praised for speed, others for care. One boy gets a stern look and is told never to stand on a naga again. You help distribute bamboo-wrapped snacks, sticky rice, roasted banana, and something chewy that might be sesame or might be mystery. The kids eat fast, then scamper off toward the drainage basins, chattering about the lizard that lives under the gate and the monk who talks to crows. You linger behind with the trainer. "Why start so young?" you ask. She watches the children vanish into the mist. "Because temples last 1,000 years, she says, "but hands don't." There's a pause. "And because cleaning is not just duty, it's how you listen, with your fingertips." You nod, understanding more than you expected to. In the afternoon, you join the kids for a hands-on lesson at the Shadow Gallery, a narrow corridor where little light reaches, where mildew grows like slow lace across the stone. The carvings here are faint, half erased by time and moisture. The perfect classroom. The children are given soft brushes and water infused with lemongrass. You demonstrate on one of the wall dancers, brushing gently in small arcs. Chan copies you, then taps your elbow. "Too fast," he whispers. You slow down. And as you do, the carving emerges, barely visible but there. A hand, a flowing sash. The curve of a cheek that's been waiting quietly under layers of green fuzz and silence. The children gather around, no one speaks. It's not reverence exactly, just attention, the kind that temples crave, the kind that whispers, "I see you." By the time the light begins to fade, the gallery is noticeably clearer. The mildew reduced, the carvings grateful, the children proud. Back at the miniature shrines, the trainer bows to each student in turn. She does the same to you. You bow back, surprised by how natural it feels. As you prepare to leave, Chan runs up and presses something into your hand. It's the pebble again. "Try not to lose it," he says. Then he's gone, vanishing into the corridor with the others, like a flock of birds headed for their next lesson. You tuck the pebble into your pocket. Maybe it's just a stone. Maybe it's something else. Either way, it's clean. You arrive early the next morning, just as the sky begins to stretch from grey to gold. A faint wind brushes through the trees, stirring the tops of the banyans, and the stones beneath your feet still hold the coolness of night. The first bird calls echo faintly across the courtyards, and then your name is called. You're assigned to a special task today. One that makes everyone around you either wince or chuckle, slime patrol, specifically the season of the sticky slime. No one likes this season. It arrives with the rains when every corner of the temple becomes a slipping hazard. The stone absorbs moisture, moss flourishes, and slime, green, translucent, and gleaming like jellyfish, takes root in places you didn't know could be slimy. The worst offenders? The stairs. You're handed a bucket of crushed coconut husk, a coarse brush made from sugar palm fibers, and a pair of old sandals with extra grip etched into the soles. Your first challenge, the elephant stairway. It's a grand ascent near the eastern entrance, wide and ceremonial, framed by weathered statues of elephants with their trunks raised. It's also completely, impressively, disgustingly slick. You kneel at the base, brush in hand, and begin the slow scraping rhythm. Each pass makes a faint squeak, like the stone is protesting your interference. The slime peels up reluctantly, clinging to the brush, and needs to be wiped off after every few strokes. A boy working next to you offers a suggestion. "Banana peels?" You raise an eyebrow. "No, really," he says. "Mash them, mix with vinegar, rub it in, cuts the slime faster." You've heard stranger things, so you give it a try. He's right. The natural acid in the banana mixture softens the algae, and the coarse fibres pick it up like lint. The smell is a bit like a fruit salad left in the sun, but it's effective. You move slowly up the stairs, one brush width at a time, feeling the surface shift from slick to slightly rough. Safe. Behind you, a woman spreads coconut husk dust, pressing it gently into the cracks. It adds texture, makes the stone grippier. Like seasoning a pan, she says. You want the stairs to remember feet, not forget them. Halfway up, you slip. Not badly, just enough to fall forward onto your knees and narrowly miss planting your forehead against a startled-looking lion carving. You mutter something unprintable under your breath. The others just nod, happens to everyone. At the top you pause to stretch. Your back is stiff, your knees are damp, and your hands smell like salad, but the steps gleam clean and dry. You take pride in that, until a monkey jogs by and tracks fresh mud across your entire path. Of course, in the afternoon you're reassigned to the rain gutter junctions, where the carved runoff troughs meet and drain into wider basins. These points tend to flood during slime season. They're also home to the infamous sneaker plants. They look innocent enough, soft green weeds with round leaves that grow right where the stone meets the channel. But step on one with the wrong angle of weight, and you're horizontal before you can say sacred architecture. You begin carefully pulling them up by hand, one by one. They come loose with a faint pop, leaving little craters behind. A girl walks by and hands you a small bundle of ginger root. For bruises, she says, or just eat it, so the temple thinks you're strong. Nearby, someone slips with a yelp and goes down in a very dramatic sprawl. No injuries, just pride and a slightly dented offering tray. The team helps them up, laughing gently, like it's a rite of passage. And in a way, it is. You move from gutter to gutter, scooping slime, scrubbing stones, sprinkling coconut husk. The tools feel natural in your hands now. Your posture adjusts instinctively. You know which parts of the stairs are trickiest, which corners breed moss fastest, which lintels are due for a second pass, even though no one says it. You know, in short, what the temple needs. As evening nears, a final task is offered. The sanctuary flagstones. These are the large, flat stones that ring the main shrine, the ones pilgrims walk across barefoot, slowly, as they approach the inner sanctum. During the slime season, they become treacherous. You and 3 others begin at one end, brushing, rinsing, drying each slab with precision. Each one holds heat from the afternoon sun. Each one has a slight dip in the center, worn smooth by centuries of footsteps. Each one carries a memory. You think about that as you work. How many feet have crossed here? How many monks? How many kings? How many pilgrims, whispering their prayers as they carried lotus flowers in trembling hands? You think about the woman who taught you how to fold a rag for corners, the boy who offered you a pebble, the trainer with eyes like flint and a voice like sandpaper, the countless hands before yours that wiped, swept, scraped, and sang. By the time you reach the last flagstone, the temple is silent again. The slime is gone. The surfaces are dry, and the moon begins to rise. You sit for a moment at the edge of the sanctuary, the stone still warm beneath you, your muscles humming with exhaustion. The monkeys have gone to sleep. The incense curls upward from the altars. A faint breeze carries the scent of lemongrass and wood smoke. And beneath all of it, the stone rests, clean, content, and waiting. You should have known something was off when you saw the hat. It was big, absurdly big. Not the usual straw kind worn to block the sun, but something taller, plumed, and much too ceremonial for actual work. It had a feather that curled like a question mark, and a small medallion stitched into the brim. The man beneath it stood at the centre of the causeway, not lifting a broom or carrying a rag, but holding a scroll. You're introduced to him simply as the overseer. He doesn't sweep. He doesn't scrub. He doesn't descend into drains or clamber up pillars, but everyone listens when he clears his throat. He motions for your team to gather. Today is a presentation day, a pre-royal inspection, the kind where every lotus leaf must lie perfectly, every carving must gleam, and every monkey must somehow vanish without a trace. The overseer walks through the temple, not with urgency, but with the kind of slow, deliberate grace that says, "I'm not cleaning a thing, but I will absolutely judge your rag work." He stops in front of a freshly polished balustrade and frowns. Not a full frown, just a tilt of the head and a slight downward purse of the lips. Everyone panics. Immediately, someone rushes forward with a polishing cloth, someone else dusts the Naga's scales again, and a third person sweeps invisible dirt from an already swept stair. The overseer nods. You're not sure whether he's pleased or just distracted by the size of his own hat. Later, he gestures toward the inner shrine, the sanctuary proper, a place normally reserved for monks, caretakers, and trusted cleaners. "Two from your team," he says. "You're chosen." You try not to look surprised or panicked. Inside, the air is different, cooler, still, heavy with incense and old breath. The floors are polished black stone. The walls whisper with carvings so fine you feel like they could crumble if you exhale too hard. Everything gleams, not because it's new, but because someone, many someones, have spent decades caring for every corner. Your job is to perform the mirror clean. The temple's inner shrine includes a polished stone mirror, once believed to reflect truth, now mostly used to reflect candlelight and the wide, awed eyes of pilgrims. Your task is to clean it without leaving streaks. You begin with a linen cloth soaked in herbal rinse, lemongrass, rice vinegar, and a dash of something flowery you can't identify. You wipe gently, slowly, in circles. Behind you, candles flicker, casting long shadows. The mirror begins to glow, not brightly, but with a deep, inner warmth, like a memory surfacing. As you work, you catch a glimpse of your own face, not clearly, but in fragments, a cheek, a brow, a smudge of yellow pollen still on your temple. You realize you haven't seen your reflection in days. You look tired, but steady. You finish the mirror, fold your cloth, and bow. It feels appropriate. Back outside, the overseer has stopped beside the statue of the seven-headed Naga. It's one of the temple's oldest sculptures, curled around the base of a stair, like a protective blanket. He's not even looking at it, just standing with arms folded, eyes scanning the horizon. Everyone waits. Then he turns slightly and says, "Tail's dusty." You suppress a sigh and drop to your knees. The tail curves around a shallow drain, and yes, there is dust. Not much, but enough to warrant attention. You gently wipe it away, polish the scales, and even find a single candle stub wedged beneath one of the stones. You remove it carefully. "Better," the overseer says. Then he walks on. You and the others trail behind, not unlike a royal entourage. His job isn't to clean, it's to see. To remember how the temple looked last month, last season, last decade. He knows which walls shift with moisture, which statues lean more each year, which stair corners crack and which ones miraculously don't. Historians still argue whether such overseers were essential to temple upkeep or merely ceremonial figures with overinflated titles and hats. But here, now, you can't deny his presence sharpens everyone's focus. Every movement becomes precise, every hand more careful. By late afternoon, the temple shines, the floors are swept, the statues are dusted, the altars gleam, the gutters are flowing, and even the birds seem quieter. You rest for a moment near the lotus pond, watching a single petal drift across the surface. The overseer stands nearby, hands behind his back. "You cleaned the sanctuary mirror well," he says softly. You nod, surprised. He doesn't look at you. "You know what we used to use for polish?" he asks. You shake your head. Powdered rice and the oil from ground betel nuts. Took hours to prepare. Left behind a faint red tint. No one uses it now, but back then. His voice trails off. You wonder if he cleaned once, long before the feathered hat, long before the scrolls. He turns to go, and then, quietly, he reaches into his sleeve and pulls something out, a small wooden token, circular, carved with a single naga wrapped around a temple tower. He places it gently in your hand. "For when you clean alone," he says. Then he walks away. You sit with the token in your palm for a long while. It's smooth, warm, light as a fallen petal. And you suddenly understand he does clean, just not with brushes anymore. Now he cleans with memory, with presence, with a hat large enough to carry 3 centuries of temple dust. You're not sure how the rumour spreads, but by the time you arrive the next morning, everyone knows the king is coming. Not tomorrow, not next week, today. And suddenly, the temple, normally quiet, serene, peacefully resigned to the slow dance of dust and time, erupts into royal panic scrub mode. Gone is the casual rhythm of brooms brushing gently, the melodic sweep of lintel songs, the quiet wipe, wipe, wipe of devotional polishing. Instead, it's full-speed coconut fibre chaos. Buckets clatter, ladders thump against columns, people run, yes, run. You are immediately assigned to the West Gallery steps, which, through a cruel trick of fate, are directly along the expected royal walking path, which means they must be spotless, scratch that, sacred, radiant, blindingly holy. You are given a cloth, a jar of beetle shell polish, and what can only be described as sacred anxiety. You kneel, you scrub. Beside you, someone mutters, "He'll see every scratch." You glance up. The carvings look fine. "He'll feel them through his sandals," the woman insists. You scrub harder. The team around you falls into synchronized chaos. One person sweeps, one polishes, one follows behind, wiping away footprints from the polishers. Someone tries to banish the monkeys, who seem more amused than threatened, especially when someone yells, "Who fed them bananas this morning?" Meanwhile, an elder in charge of aesthetics, not function, wanders past, holding a basket of lotus blossoms and sighing dramatically every few minutes. "Too much moss," he mutters at the statue of a dancing Apsara. She looks tired. You're not even sure what that means. Another team is dispatched to clean the platform of the sacred urns, a set of polished vessels that sit in the central courtyard and collect rainwater. They're almost always neglected, but today they are scrubbed inside and out, polished with salt water and adorned with fresh garlands. Someone even climbs inside one of them to scrub the inner curve. They do not return quickly. Elsewhere, a group of boys are tasked with brushing bat droppings off the tower ledges. They are not thrilled. One returns with a smear across his cheek and says simply, "It's war up there." Still the work continues. You're pulled off stairs mid-scrub and sent to assist with the shadow shrine, a tiny, tucked-away alcove near the library. Why? Because last time the king visited, he paused there for exactly 3 seconds. And now it must be perfect. Inside the shrine, the air smells of damp incense and aged sandalwood. The light is low, the dust fine. You wipe each carved edge with a cloth dipped in jasmine water. The statue in the center, a meditative Buddha with closed eyes and a cracked lip, receives a gentle polishing. You replace the wilting flowers in the offering bowl with fresh petals. Then you step back. The shrine doesn't sparkle, it doesn't gleam, but it feels still, balanced, ready. You hope that's enough. Back outside, more scrambling. A painter arrives, not for murals, but for crack masking. He carries a tray of fine, stone-coloured paste and brushes tiny lines into damaged carvings to make them less tragic. "This is not restoration," he mutters. "This is distraction." Still it works. The vines crawling along the southern wall are quickly stripped. The gutter paths are swept 3 times. Offerings are replenished. One woman repaints the faded eye of a guardian lion using ground charcoal and a single hair from a horse's tail. You overhear someone whisper, "If he sees a monkey, we're cursed." The monkey in question is currently stealing a mango from the offering tray. No one dares stop it. The overseer reappears, of course, hat taller than ever, scroll longer than yesterday. He walks the perimeter, nodding, pointing, adjusting the placement of a bowl by a single inch. No one questions him. He stops by the sanctuary entrance and whispers something to one of the women kneeling there. She rushes off. Moments later, she returns with a single candle. It is lit and placed carefully at the statue's feet. "Warmth," the overseer says. "Let the king feel warmth when he enters." Then he leaves. Around midday, the sun emerges just briefly, and everything changes. The rain-damp stone begins to shine. The air thickens. The scent of lemongrass, incense, and worry floats upward. You look around and realize it's working. The temple has transformed. It's still ancient, still cracked, still worn by centuries of heat and monsoon and footsteps, but today it holds itself a little taller. The dust has settled, the carvings breathe more deeply, even the stairs seem to exhale with pride. And then comes the silence. Everyone steps back. Tools are stashed behind pillars, cloths tucked into sashes. A small gong sounds from the front gate. He is here. The king. You won't see him, not really. You've been told to remain behind the line of Naga balustrades just beyond the East Causeway, but you hear him? The low murmur of voices, the shuffle of ceremonial sandals, the brief, hollow ring of his footsteps on the polished stone you cleaned this morning. He pauses, they say, at the sacred urns. He spends 2 minutes at the shadow shrine. He turns once in the courtyard, lifts his gaze toward the tower. Then he is gone. No speech, no nod, no blessing, just presence. But as soon as he passes, the temple changes again. The tension melts, people breathe, laughter bubbles up. Someone cheers quietly behind a pillar. Someone else says, "He didn't trip, that's all that matters." The overseer walks past, expression unreadable. Then just once, he says, "Well done." You sit beside the steps, pull off your sandals and stretch your toes. The work isn't over, the petals will fall again, the dust will return, the drain will clog. A monkey will absolutely steal another offering tomorrow. But for now, the temple is clean, it stood proud, and you were part of it. The next morning is unusually quiet. Not the eerie kind of quiet, but the good kind, the earned kind, the kind that happens after a storm has passed, after a royal visit has swept through the halls and left behind nothing but faded footprints and the gentle rustle of wind in the palms. You stretch your shoulders, roll your ankles, and glance around at a temple still basking in the afterglow of being noticed. But your moment of peace is short-lived. As short-lived, you're needed in the hall of dancers, not for cleaning, not for scrubbing, for dusting, feather dusting to be exact. Because apparently once every few weeks, a select team of temple performers is called in to help maintain the upper galleries, the highest, most delicate carvings, many of which depict dancing apsaras, celestial nymphs, frozen in mid-spin. And the logic is simple. Who better to dust dancers than other dancers? You're not a dancer, of course, but today you're paired with them. You meet the team in the side cloister, 5 women dressed in faded rehearsal sashes, their hair tied in loose knots, their faces bright but tired. Their hands are calloused, their eyes sharp. One of them, Mali, hands you a long-handled feather brush made from dyed peacock quills. "You'll work the lower carvings," she says. "We take the high." And with that they leap into motion. Quite literally. They move with grace you hadn't thought possible inside a structure this ancient. Each step is a glide, each stretch upward an elegant reach. They twirl lightly on their toes, brushing lintels and arches as they go, sending tiny clouds of dust raining silently to the floor where you dutifully sweep them up. It's part performance, part maintenance, and, strangely mesmerizing, you watch one dancer reach for a high freeze, her brush sweeping across the arm of a stone apsara with the same care she might offer a living partner. Another spins down a column, brushing with each turn, her sash fluttering like temple silk in the wind. The rhythm is soft, sweep, step, turn, sweep, step, turn. You fall into your own pattern, less graceful, but equally focused. You take the base carvings, the serpents, the flora, the decorative bands along the doorframes. You clean gently, carefully, aware that too much pressure could mean breaking off something that's survived 6 dynasties and 12 monsoons. And then someone starts humming, a low, haunting tune. The dancers hum along as they move. It's a temple song, old as the stones. No instruments, just voice and motion and the rhythm of dust being lifted into sunlight. Used to be a blessing ritual, Marley tells you during a pause, to cleanse the air after funerals. Now it's just a habit. You nod, unsure whether to smile or bow, probably both. Midway through the session, one of the dancers stops and points to a crack in the wall above a central pillar. "Loose stone," she says. You fetch a caretaker, who confirms it's shifting. "That's why we dust," he mutters. "We catch what the rain won't." And you realize this isn't just dusting, it's inspection, preservation, a silent conversation with time. Historians still debate whether Apsara dancers in ancient times served practical temple roles or were purely ceremonial. Some believe they helped maintain altars and prepared offerings. Others think that's romanticized nonsense. But here, now, in the Hall of Dancers, you see the practicality of grace. Toward the end of the afternoon, a light drizzle begins. The team retreats to the inner gallery, where the wind can't reach. You sit together on a dry ledge, sharing sweet rice cakes wrapped in pandan leaves. One dancer unwraps a cloth from her ankle and pulls out a tiny wooden carving, an apsara, no taller than your finger. "From my grandmother," she says. "She said to leave it in the temple when I've danced enough." You watch as she places it gently at the base of a small shrine niche. No ceremony, no fuss. Just a soft exhale. The others follow suit, placing small tokens, coins, flower buds, even a single broken bracelet. You look down at your own hands, dusty, stiff, rough, and realize you've left your mark too. Not a token, but every surface you cleaned, every line you traced, every whisper you swept from stone. After a long moment, the group stands. One final sweep, one final turn, one last pass of feathers against fading light. And the Hall of Dancers, now clear of dust and memory, exhales. You collect your tools, bow slightly to the nearest statue, and follow the dancers down the corridor. Outside, the rain has stopped. The puddles gleam softly. The stone steps are slick again, but not dangerously so. Just enough to remind you this place is alive. The dancers vanish into the east wing, their laughter echoing faintly. You stand there, brush in hand, looking up at a carving of an apsara, mid-spin. For a second you could swear she's looking back. Then a feather drifts down from above and lands on your shoulder. You smile. And keep walking. The rain returns the next morning, not as a drizzle, but a full, soaking curtain, the kind that turns stone dark and jungle leaves shiny as oil. You arrive barefoot, shoes tucked in your sash. There's no point in trying to keep anything dry today. The air smells of mud and incense ash, and somewhere behind the temple walls, frogs celebrate like it's a festival thrown just for them. You're sent to the eastern terrace, a section that sees less foot traffic, but far more wildlife. The reason? Fire ants? Yes. Today, you're helping address a small but persistent infestation that has taken up residence between the flagstones. The ants don't care about carvings. They don't worship. They don't step aside when you come through. They just build their little kingdoms directly under the floor, and sometimes, often in fact, they bite. You meet your partner for the task, a quiet woman named Ni, who carries a sack filled with ground cinnamon bark, a pot of sticky sap paste, and a bamboo pole tipped with a tuft of lemongrass fibres. "What do we do?" you ask. "We declare war," she replies calmly. The process is equal parts science and ritual. First, you use a soft brush to sweep away surface dirt and locate the tiny fissures and entrances between the flagstones. You find one almost immediately, a neat pile of soil pushed up like a miniature volcano, ringed with frantic red specks darting in and out. Nai kneels beside it, dips her fingers into the sap paste, and daubs a ring around the opening. The sap hardens into a barrier the ants can't cross. Then she sprinkles cinnamon along the edges. They hate the smell, she says, and the taste, like bitter fire to them. You watch as the ants retreat, not quickly, but gradually, resentfully, as if insulted. The rain makes the job harder. The paste needs to be reapplied frequently. The cinnamon turns clumpy, but slowly, terrace by terrace, the ant trails vanish, until you reach the eastern platform near the ancient prayer tree. This one is bad. The ants have colonized an entire length of stone, their trails darting across the carvings like frantic scribbles. One even runs directly across the foot of a guardian statue, which feels a little bold, even for ants. You prepare the paste. Anique pauses. No, she says. This one we asked to leave. You raise an eyebrow, but she's already pulling out a small bundle of dried leaves. She lights one end, and the smoke rises in lazy circles. It smells faintly of clove and bark. She waves it over the trail and chants softly, not a song but more of a whisper, a request. You don't understand the words, but the ants change direction. They don't disappear, not entirely, but they scatter, retreating into other corners, other stones, and in their absence, Nee sweeps the area clean, then applies the barrier paste. You could have done that first, you point out. She smiles. The smoke is for the gods. Later, as you're coiling up the empty cinnamon pouch, someone calls from the north terrace. They've found a stone seal, buried under a layer of moss and thin soil. You jog over to find a small, circular carving, no more than 6 inches wide, set into the base of a crumbling wall. At first you think it's just a decorative medallion, but Nee kneels beside it, brushes away the grime, and reveals a symbol, a lotus curled around a rising sun. She inhales sharply. Temple seal, she murmurs. Boundary marker. Historians still argue whether these markers were ceremonial or practical, meant to denote sacred spaces, legal zones, or merely indicate construction zones. Either way, this one is rare. You clean it gently with a damp cloth, using slow, circular motions. The grooves are shallow but still clear. Someone fetches the overseer. He arrives, hat slightly soggier than usual, and crouches beside the seal, his fingers hovering but never touching. It's from the first phase, he says quietly, before the main towers. You ask if it should be removed, preserved somewhere safer. He shakes his head. This is where it belongs. You help build a small protective edge around it, flat stones from the nearby storage pile arranged like a gentle hug. Someone places a single flower in the center, not for show, just because it feels right. That evening, as the rain lets up, you're invited to join the ant team for a small meal under the cloister, sticky rice, salted fish, and, fittingly, tea brewed with cinnamon bark. You sit on the steps, watching as steam rises from the flagstones. The ants are gone, for now. The temple smells warm, earthy, content. Nee leans over and says, "They'll come back." You nod. "Of course they will." "Then we'll do this again," she adds. You smile, because here, in this place, nothing is ever done. Nothing stays clean forever. But that's not the point. The work isn't about winning, it's about showing up, offering care. Sweeping the same step again and again, not because it's dirty, but because it's worth it. You stretch your legs, sip your tea, and glance down at your feet. A single ant walks across your toe. You let it pass. By now you think you've cleaned everything. Lintels, gutters, drains, stairways, statues, even the underside of shrine tables with cobwebs so old they might qualify for archaeological protection. But when you report for duty this morning, the supervisor simply points toward the central causeway, hands you a polished rag, and says, "Today we clean the gods." You blink. Then blink again. He doesn't elaborate. You follow the path toward the heart of the temple, past columns you now know by name, under arches where moss grows back as fast as you scrub it, and into the Hall of Deities, a long rectangular gallery lined with statues both sacred and solemn, each sitting quietly atop its own pedestal. Some are full-bodied Buddhas with serene smiles, others are fragments, torsos without heads, heads without hands, arms folded eternally in gestures of welcome or stillness, and all of them are dusty. Enter the cleaning team, 4 elders and you. They don't move quickly, they don't speak much, but they unwrap their tools with reverence, soft cotton cloths, tiny brushes, bowls of cool water, and a solution made from herbs, ash, and the oils of 5 different flower petals. You're handed a cloth and directed toward the 3rd statue on the right. It's a guardian figure, probably Vishnu, seated cross-legged with one hand raised and the other resting on his knee. His chest bears a faint groove, like someone laid their head there for a very long time. Your job? Wipe every inch with care. Not pressure, not speed, just presence. You start with the base, slow, circular movements. The cloth comes away brown, then grey, then nearly clean. You move upward, tracing the folds of the stone robe, the delicate necklace chiseled with patience 1,000 years ago. At the shoulder, you pause. There's a chip, tiny, triangular, barely noticeable. You brush it gently. The stone around it darkens slightly with moisture, as if sighing in recognition. Across the gallery, another cleaner hums softly. It's not a song you know, just a thread of melody, floating on dust. "Only the gods get dusted with flower oil," someone whispers beside you. You glance over. An elder with skin like woven rope is gently polishing the eyelids of a meditating figure. "Why?" you ask. He shrugs. "They get tired." You nod. It makes more sense than you'd expect. As you work, you notice small details no one mentions. A toe worn smooth by centuries of touch. A faint red pigment still hiding in the grooves of a crown. A tiny offering bowl tucked behind a statue's foot. Inside, a dried lotus petal and a pebble shaped suspiciously like a heart. You move on to the next figure. This one is missing its head. The neck stump is smooth. A small vine has crept up the side of the pedestal. Someone has placed a string of jasmine where the head might have been. You don't feel sad, you just clean. And while you do, something strange happens. You start to talk. Not loudly, not words really, just thoughts, phrases, questions, observations. You've seen everything, haven't you? Do you ever miss having arms? I hope someone cleans me like this someday. No one laughs, because everyone else is doing it too. The gods, it turns out, are wonderful listeners. Historians still argue whether temple statues were merely representations of divine presence or considered literally alive through ritual and devotion. But here, among the scrubbers and dusters, there's no debate. You speak, they listen. And maybe, just maybe, they forgive you for skipping your turn with the gutter sludge last week. Later, you help one of the elders clean the great standing Buddha, a 10-foot-tall figure carved from dark stone, tucked into an alcove where light filters in like smoke. The arms are missing. The chest is cracked, but the face remains intact. Serene, watching. You climb a short ladder to reach the brow. There's dust there, fine, golden, pollen-like. You brush it carefully and the expression seems to soften. Or maybe that's you. When you descend, the elder presses a finger to the statue's foot and murmurs, "He stood for peace." Still does. You nod, unsure what to say. The final statue of the day is small, a weathered figure tucked into a recess near the outer gallery. No one's quite sure who it represents. It could be a minor spirit, a local deity, a forgotten king. It's headless, armless, and covered in a layer of moss, so thick it looks like it's wearing a shawl. You brush it gently. Under the moss is stone. Under the stone, stillness. And under that, something like memory. When you finish, you light a small candle and leave it beside the base. You don't know why, it just feels appropriate. By sunset, the hall of deities smells like petals and damp stone. The figures gleam softly. No one says much. The team gathers their tools, wraps their cloths, and exits quietly, like they've just finished a long conversation. You're the last to leave. You turn once, look back. All those eyes, closed, carved, watching, seem a little less tired. And you feel lighter, not clean, not finished, but lighter. The rain has passed, but its memory lingers. You walk through the temple gates with your scarf still damp from yesterday, your sandals squeaking with every step. The trees around the outer moat shimmer with dew, and tiny mushrooms, pale, perfect, and undoubtedly temporary, have sprouted in the cracks between the stones. Today's task? Repairs, which, as you quickly discover, doesn't always mean fixing something. Sometimes it just means hiding it. Your supervisor for the day is a man named Kiri, tall and lanky with the permanent expression of someone who has already accepted the futility of perfection. He carries a pouch of crushed stone paste, a tiny brush, and a piece of folded cloth marked with a diagram. "We're not masons," he says. "We're illusionists." You follow him to the northeast pavilion, where a row of statues stands silently against the morning light. One of them, a celestial guardian, has a missing hand. Not new damage, not even recent. It's been gone so long moss has grown in the socket. Kiri points at it. Can't fix it, but we can help people not notice. His tools are simple, a paste made of powdered sandstone and glue derived from boiled bark. He mixes it gently in a coconut shell, stirs until it's the colour of weathered stone, and uses the tiny brush to dab it into the gap, blending the edges. When it dries, it won't replace the hand, but it will soften the absence. You ask why they don't just sculpt a new hand. He shrugs. We don't replace what time removes. That's for others to argue. Historians still debate whether broken statues should be restored, reimagined, or left as is. Some argue that replacing parts erases history. Others insist that showing damage disrespects the divine. And some, like Kiri, just want to keep people from tripping over what's missing. Next, you head to a cracked pillar base, the kind tourists love to lean on for photos. It's split at the bottom, thin roots creeping into the seam. Not dangerous yet, but visible. Here the work is different. Not patching, not fixing, just repositioning. Kiri shows you how to sweep sand into the gap. Then he presses a stone tile, previously removed from another section, into place like a shim. He sprays it lightly with water. When the sun hits it, it will look exactly like it belongs. 3 weeks, maybe, he says. Then the roots will push again. We'll move it again. And somehow you find that comforting. After a break, spent sipping ginger water and watching a rooster chase a butterfly across the inner courtyard, you're sent to the Southern Library, a smaller building with 2 towers and a roof that groans when it rains. You've been told to attend to the dancers. You expect statues. What you find are carvings, a row of apsaras etched into the outer wall, each one mid-step, arms outstretched, eyes closed. Their stone is flaking. Not dramatically, just thin layers of powder peeling from their wrists, shoulders, brows. You're given a soft brush and a bowl of water mixed with sugarcane extract and ash. It smells faintly like burnt tea. You won't stop the flaking, your guide says, but you can remind it to slow down. You brush each dancer gently, using slow, circular motions. The stone sheds tiny particles with every pass, not chunks, just dust. Their eyes seem to watch you as you work. One has lost her mouth entirely to erosion. Another is missing a finger. A third is nearly perfect, but for a deep scratch across her hip, possibly from a vine or an impatient archaeologist's boot. You ask what the dancers represent. Time, the guide says. Not beauty. Everyone always says beauty, but no time. That's why they're dancing. You keep brushing, and for a moment you swear their feet shift ever so slightly beneath the moss. In the late afternoon, you're asked to assist with the face repositioning. It sounds sinister. It's not. It refers to a long-standing tradition of rotating certain statues, especially when they've broken or become disfigured in a way that might distract visitors or, worse, offend them. You arrive at a small side chapel where a headless Buddha sits at the center. The statue is intact except for the missing head. A fresh one has been carved, not ancient, but weathered by time and stored underground for years. Your job? Help position it on a nearby pedestal, not on the statue. Not as a repair, just beside it. Kiri explains. This way the form is complete, but we don't pretend to fix what we didn't create. The new head is heavier than it looks. You lift it with care, fingers slipping slightly on the cool, damp stone. You set it down, rotate it. Adjust the angle. When it's aligned, the body and the head, though separate, seem at peace. Someone places a garland at the base. No glue, no mortar, just respect. By sunset, the temple glows gold again. The wind carries the scent of dust and bark paste. The gods are still broken, still chipped, still weathered, but no longer quite as exposed. You walk past a lintel you helped patch that morning. You can't see the crack now, not because it's gone. See it's gone, but because it's softened, disguised, not repaired, not erased, just gently turned to face a quieter truth. You're told to bring a stool today. That's never a good sign. A stool means height, and height means ladders, and ladders mean ceiling duty. The task sounds simple enough, cleaning the upper vaults of the eastern mandapa, the enclosed pillared hall just beyond the sanctuary, but once you step inside, stool in hand, you realize what you're actually here to do. Cobwebs, so many cobwebs. They dangle like tiny silver hammocks from every carved lotus boss, from every crossbeam, from corners no broom has dared reach since the Bayan's smile was still fresh on stone. Some hang low and sway in the breeze like ghost flags. Others form little domes over candle soot marks and forgotten chisel chips. You tip your head back, then regret it instantly. A bit of web falls on your lip. It tastes like old sandalwood and regret. Your team today includes 2 acrobatic novices from the nearby school and 1 old man who insists on carrying a clay pot filled with lizard repellent, a pungent, homemade concoction of chili, garlic, and eucalyptus. Not to harm, he says, shaking the pot, just to warn. You start at the eastern corner. The trick, as you learn quickly, is angle. Too steep, and your brush leaves a streak of old soot. Too shallow, and you'll snap the finer webs and leave a mess of fibers behind. The perfect angle, apparently, is somewhere between craning and mild existential crisis. You sweep in small arcs, careful not to dislodge any loose bricks. As you work, little bits of ceiling history flutter down, blackened ash from centuries of incense, the occasional dried leaf, one suspiciously spherical lizard dropping. One of the acrobats hops from one pillar base to another, brushing casually with the ease of a temple-born cat. You try not to feel offended by how graceful he makes it look. Meanwhile, the garlic lizard man is placing tiny dishes of his repellent mix in high niches. They won't stay gone, he mutters, but they'll remember. A gecko stares at you from behind a lintel. You nod in mutual respect. Halfway through the morning, the room smells of wet stone, sweat, and chili paste. You've discovered that webs on the southern beam are the stickiest, possibly from heat rising during festival fires. The ones in the western corner are older, finer, almost historical in appearance. Someone whispers, "Don't sweep that one, it looks important." You leave it. Possibly the first recorded instance of sacred spider conservation. Historians still argue whether temple spiders were tolerated, ignored, or actively removed. Some believe they were seen as guardians, protectors against flies and other less noble insects. Others claim the webs were wiped away daily, along with old incense and stale offerings. No definitive record remains. But judging by your experience, the spiders have tenure as you climb higher onto a rickety wooden frame to reach the keystone. Something glimmers. You pause. It's not gold, not jewels, just mica, a shard embedded in the stone that catches the sunlight just right. You reach out, brush it gently, and find a tiny etching beside it. A name, maybe, or a mark, carved so faintly it could have been a joke or a prayer. You call down, but no one answers. The others are lost in their own dust storms, so you press a finger to the mark, just briefly. Then keep cleaning. You descend near noon, hands sore, arms trembling slightly. One of the acrobats offers you a cup of cooled rice water. You drink in grateful gulps. "You left the big web," he says. You nod. "Good. That one's older than all of us." In the afternoon, your work shifts to the painted ceiling panel, a section of faded fresco above the north portico, rumoured to depict scenes from the Ramayana. You can barely make out the outlines now. A curled monkey tail, a bow, a sliver of what might be a chariot wheel. Your job isn't to restore it, just protect it from pigeons. Yes, today you are on anti-pigeon duty. The technique? Soak strands of dried citrus, peel in vinegar, and hang them from a bamboo line just below the mural. It smells awful, but it works. Within minutes, 2 pigeons flap in, sniff the air with distaste, as much as a pigeon can, and retreat. You salute them with a citrus rind. By sunset, the ceiling gleams faintly. The webs are gone, or mostly. The mural breathes again, dim but dignified. The beams are dry, the bricks stable, the lizards repelled for now, and the pigeons properly offended. You sit on your stool and tilt your head back. The ceiling, once a cluttered chaos of threads and soot, now looks orderly. Still old, still cracked, but respected. And in the quiet hush of that shadowy mandapa, with dusk slipping in like cool breath, you hear something strange, a drop of water falling from beam to basin. Then silence. Then a creak. Then laughter. You glance up. The acrobat is sitting cross-legged on the highest lintel, humming. Below him the garlic man is asleep with his pot on his lap. And somewhere a spider is already rebuilding. There's a strange silence in the temple this morning, not the usual hush of early footsteps or the muffled rustle of leaves overhead, but a different kind of stillness, the kind that means something important is about to happen, or already has. You arrive at the West Gopura, the gatehouse rarely used by visitors where 3 caretakers are hunched over something on the ground. As you approach, one of them straightens and points at the stone threshold. "Termites," that's all they say. You kneel down beside them and see it. Fine channels of soil pressed into the cracks between the stones. Tiny highways of industry, snaking between carvings and disappearing under floor slabs. Today's assignment becomes clear. You're not cleaning, you're not restoring, you're tracking. You're a termite detective now. Your partner today is Dara, a soft-spoken temple historian with a cane in one hand and a pouch of chalk powder in the other. "We map them first," she says. "Only then do we choose which ones to block." You look at the paths. They're meticulous. Tiny arcs that dip between the bricks, climb corners, curve around old altar legs. It's architectural. You half expect them to have traffic signs. Dara sprinkles chalk gently into the seams. The white powder highlights the paths instantly, turning invisible work into a glowing diagram, a network, a language. "We don't destroy them immediately," she explains. "Some termites help. They clean, they aerate. It's only when they breach the wood." She taps the threshold. Hollow. You begin sweeping out loose soil with a soft brush, not to disrupt, just to observe. Inside one passage, you glimpse movement, tiny antennae vanishing into a slit in the stone, and for the first time in your temple cleaning career, you hesitate. Because it's not just the gods who live here, there are civilizations below your feet. After the mapping, you help apply barriers made from burnt husks and tree resin. They smell harsh, like old ink and vinegar. The paste is smeared along active paths, breaking them gently, like bending a river without damming it. Elsewhere, the caretakers coat the base of a wooden stela, one of the few surviving pieces of Angkorian era, writing still standing in place. The text is carved in delicate Khmer script and the termites have been nibbling at the base. Dara touches the engraving gently. It tells the story of a water dispute, she says. 2 villages, 1 river, 1 wise monk. You raise an eyebrow. And how does it end? No one knows. Bottom half was eaten. You both laugh, a little sadly. The afternoon brings the archives, not scrolls, but the long covered gallery where inscriptions live. Thousands of them, some weathered beyond recognition, others crisp and clear, protected from sun and storm by a fortunate curve of stone. These inscriptions are like the heartbeat of the temple: royal decrees, dedication prayers, inventory lists, measurements for rituals, even recipes for preserving flowers. You clean them with a mix of rice water and salt-free ash, dabbed gently with linen squares. No scrubbing, no wiping, just the lightest tap and lift motion, like coaxing ink from paper without touching it. You find one inscription etched sideways along the lintel groove of a window, almost hidden, just a list of names. Monks, Dara says from beside you. Most likely. Some historians think they were stoneworkers, others think it's a memorial. The stone is smoother here. You trace the names with your cloth and imagine the hands that carved them. By sunset, the termite trails are disrupted, the inscriptions are breathing again, and you're utterly exhausted. But then Dara beckons you toward the rear prayer niche, a place you've passed 100 times without noticing. She points to the lintel. There, above the threshold, is a tiny elephant carving, no bigger than your palm, half obscured by soot and shadow. It's not in any diagram, not mentioned in any guidebook. No one knows why it's here, she whispers. It's not even in the original plans. You reach up and brush it gently. The elephant's eye gleams just a little. It watches the termites, you say. Dara laughs. Maybe. You both sit on the temple steps as the sun begins to set, painting everything in gold. It's the kind of gold that doesn't last. That fades the moment night arrives, but right now it's everywhere, on stone, on moss, on your hands. And in that golden hush, as the wind stirs the palm fronds and the temple exhales once more, you realize something. Even the smallest things, the webs, the cracks, the ants, the names matter, not because they're famous, but because they're still here. Today begins with the rustle of palm brooms and the sound of someone unsuccessfully shooing a goose or, a goose out of the central library steps. You don't ask questions. You just accept that sometimes temple work includes poultry diplomacy. The goose situation is quickly resolved by a boy holding a gourd drum and a handful of papaya peel. But your real task today lies beyond the main causeway, in a place few visitors ever bother to linger, the outer moat embankment. It's overgrown, flooded in parts, and utterly necessary, because while everyone marvels at the towers and the statues, it's the infrastructure that keeps the place alive. Your guide today is Soka, a temple engineer who looks far too excited about drainage grates. He wears a woven hat shaped like an upside-down bowl and carries a notched stick for checking water levels. "You'll like this," he says. "We're cleaning out the emergency runoff channels. You do not like this, but off you go, machete in one hand, coiled rope in the other, trudging through knee-high reeds and mud that tries to adopt your sandals permanently. The channel you arrive at is narrow, stone-lined, curved like an ox horn, and clogged with, everything. Dead leaves, silt, bits of broken incense holders, a sandal, possibly ancient, possibly from Tuesday. You lower yourself into the channel and begin scooping muck into a wide, woven tray. Soccer watches approvingly. Very efficient. The last person fell in. You scrape, you rinse, you gag once. It's gloriously grimy. Soka explains that this moat, and others like it, aren't just decorative. They equalize pressure, absorb floodwaters, and keep the foundations from cracking. Water, he says with a theatrical finger waggle, is both guardian and destroyer. You wonder how long it took to figure that out. As you move downstream, you spot something odd, a cluster of smooth stones placed in a deliberate spiral, submerged under a shallow flow of water. you point it out. Ah, Soka says, offerings. Some locals still place them. Spiral means continuity, flow of life. You nod and carefully clean around them. You don't move them. Some things aren't for rearranging. By mid-morning, you're at the Lotus Pond, a wider section of the moat choked with floating plants and algae. Here, the work is slower. You and 2 others use wide paddles to push floating clusters toward the bank where they're hauled out and spread to dry. You're told the dried lotus debris becomes natural insulation for the temple's storage huts. The cycle continues. You pause for a sip of lemony water and glance around. The pond glitters. Dragonflies skim its surface. Somewhere, a heron stands on one leg like a statue pretending not to be a bird. And on the far side, 3 women are gathered at the edge, pulling handfuls of petals from the water and placing them into bowls. You wade closer. They're collecting fresh lotus stamens, drying them in the sun and stuffing them into narrow cloth sachets. "What are those for?" you ask. One smiles. "Temple pillows." You blink. She explains, the sachets are dried, then wrapped in palm cloth and placed inside the rest pillows used by monks and caretakers. The scent repels insects and soothes the head. Also, she adds, they smell like sleep. You inhale. She's not wrong. By afternoon, you're back at the southern canal gate, clearing out the last blockages. One of them turns out to be a half-buried sculpture fragment, just an eye, and part of a headdress, staring eternally from the muck. You clean it gently, lay it beside the channel. Someone will collect it later, or not. Sometimes the gods want to be left where they fell, Soka says. Historians still argue whether minor sculptures were discarded, buried intentionally, or naturally eroded into their surroundings. Some even suggest statues were periodically retired and returned to the earth, fed back into the temple's soul. You believe it. Everything here seems to circle back. As the day ends, you watch as workers open a sluice gate, releasing a controlled stream of water into a new holding trench. It rushes out like breath, washing away weeks of build-up and carrying petals, leaves, and lost time with it. The setting sun catches the current, turning it into liquid gold. You sit on a mossy rock, utterly soaked, clothes clinging to your skin, smelling of lotus and algae, and you feel content. Not heroic, not even particularly useful, just part of something old, tired, and stubbornly beautiful, a system of balance, of floods and drains, of stone and bloom, of gods and goose chasers. The wind brushes your face. The moat hums, and somewhere in the channel beneath your feet, something tiny continues to swim. You wake up sore in places you didn't even know could be sore. Ankles, ribs, even one toe that seems to have personally resented yesterday's mud-soaked adventures. But there's no time to dwell, because today is Roof Day, and Roof Day is exactly as terrifying as it sounds. You're assigned to a group tasked with sweeping and checking the upper galleries, the high, sloping tiers that make up the temple's most iconic silhouette. They're carved, slanted, sun-baked, and apparently in need of gentle attention. Your lead is a wiry woman named Nika, who wears temple rope sandals and has the unsettling habit of humming while climbing nearly vertical stone like a jungle lizard. "This roof," she says, already halfway up a side ladder, "is older than some countries. Walk like you're stepping on your grandmother's stories." You try not to overthink that. The first ascent is manageable. Stone steps, smoothed by centuries, lead you to a flat ledge above the Hall of Echoes. From here, you get your first real look at the tiles. They're not shingles like modern roofs. These are overlapping stone panels, each the size of a large book, placed with maddening precision and bound by gravity, friction, and sheer stubbornness. Moss grows between them. Tiny wildflowers peek from cracks. Insects skitter like rumours between the shadows. Your job, clean between the tiles without dislodging them. Easy, right? You crawl forward on all fours, gently brushing debris into a cloth sack. Twigs, old feathers. One silver hairpin, no explanation. Every few feet you pause and inspect the joins. Some are cracked, some are waterlogged. One section is clearly sagging. You alert Nika. She marks it with a dab of red wax. Later, masons will examine it more closely. "We don't fix what we don't understand," she says. As you scoot along a particularly sloped edge, you come face to face with a bat. Not large, not aggressive, just asleep. You freeze. It doesn't. Instead, it exhales softly and tucks its wings tighter. You back away slowly. No sudden moves, no bat drama today. Below, the temple stretches out in all directions. Moats glittering, trees swaying, roofs layered like pages in a book you're finally learning to read. And from this height, you can see people like specks, monks crossing courtyards, caretakers brushing moss from steps, a child chasing a rooster around a half-collapsed statue base, and you on the roof, talking to bats. By midday, the sun bakes the stone hot enough to cook rice. You retreat to the upper east pavilion, shaded and lined with ancient gutter spouts shaped like crocodile mouths. Your task here is clearing the mouths, literally. Inside each one is a build-up of leaves, bird nests, and one particularly stubborn clay plug that may or may not have once been a shrine offering. You dig carefully, coaxing the debris free with a stick carved from dried palm rib. Water trickles out. Success. Nika nods. The gods must drool, or the whole place floods. You're not sure if she's joking. As the sun dips, you help lower bundles of debris using rope nets. You feel for a moment like part of an ancient pulley team, a forgotten gear in a temple-sized clock. Then you stub your elbow and fall halfway into a decorative gutter basin. Dignity compromised. But hey, the bats didn't see. Historians still argue whether temple roofs were maintained regularly in the Angkorian era or left to weather until urgent repairs were needed. Inscriptions suggest seasonal sweeping teams, but there's debate over how often they climbed and whether they ever spoke to bats mid-shift. You sit back on your haunches, brush in one hand, fingers sore, eyes full of sun haze. You think about how many feet have walked these same slopes, how many rainstorms have slid across these tiles, how many moments of quiet have clung to this rooftop like dew. You lie back, head against the stone, and let the wind dry your sweat. A hawk glides overhead. The temple groans just slightly as the heat fades and the day exhales. A voice beside you says, "You're sunburnt." You glance over. Nika tosses you a cloth soaked in lotus water. You press it to your neck. Relief. Later, you descend slowly, each step deliberate, each breath grounded. The earth feels strange beneath your feet, less certain than the sky. You wash your hands in a basin near the main entrance. The water runs pink with sandstone dust. You watch it swirl down the drain and wonder if some of that dust was once a chisel stroke or part of a forgotten roof tile or a bat's personal ceiling panel. You dry your hands on your sash and look back once more. The roof gleams faintly in the twilight. Still standing, still steep, still full of stories. You survived roof day. Barely. You're scheduled for something called whispering wall duty today. You don't know what that means, but honestly, at this point, you've braved ant colonies, termite trails, sacred cobwebs, and semi-feral roof tiles. If today's assignment turns out to be actual whispering walls, you'll just nod and start brushing them. You report to the northwest cloister, a shaded corridor where the air always feels a few degrees cooler, like the stone remembers night longer than everything else. Here, the walls are covered with faint carvings, sumi carvings, some almost too shallow to see, others etched deeply enough to cast shadows. Your partner today is an old caretaker named Van. He walks slowly, carries a small satchel of tools, and wears a broad-brimmed hat decorated with faded temple emblems. He doesn't explain much, just gestures toward the wall and says, "They talk, you just have to listen." You wait for a follow-up. There isn't one. So you begin. The first panel is a series of dancers, arms curved like flowing water. Beneath their feet, a delicate pattern of rippling lines, maybe a stylized pond, maybe wind. The stone is dry and brittle here. You don't clean it with water, you use a soft brush, the bristles barely touching the surface. As you brush, the dancers emerge from their haze, smiles, anklets. One has a finger raised, pointing towards something outside the panel. You follow her direction. It leads to a line of script, almost invisible. You hold up a mirror to reflect light across it sideways, one of Van's old tricks. And suddenly, letters bloom across the stone. Faint, unfinished. A list of items: rice, honey, lotus milk, sandalwood. You look at Van. Temple shopping list, he says with a shrug. Or maybe a ritual. Historians still argue whether inscriptions like these were devotional records or simply administrative notations. Some believe temples were part spiritual centers, part bureaucratic headquarters. Others claim these notes were reminders carved by caretakers themselves, like eternal post-its. You move on to the next section. This one's different. It's not a scene. It's a single figure, seated cross-legged, holding something round. The detail is worn, but you see a faint halo behind the head and a cluster of birds etched beside one shoulder. You ask Van who it is. No one knows, he says. Could be a monk, could be a prince. Could be someone who swept floors and wanted to be remembered. You lean in. Carved below the figure is a shallow mark, barely a groove, but it's shaped like an ear. You blink. Whispering wall, Van says again, this time tapping the ear gently. Try it. You kneel beside the carving and press your lips near the stone. You feel ridiculous. Still you whisper, "What did you do here?" Nothing happens. Then Van says, "Now listen." He taps a hollow panel beside the stone. The sound resonates faintly, travelling along the groove, curling around the corridor like smoke. You realize the carvings are placed to echo, to carry sound in a particular path. The wall doesn't talk, but it remembers how to listen. You sit back, a little stunned. The rest of the day is spent tracing that wall, panel by panel. You clean and uncover a series of shallow grooves, all curving subtly, leading from chamber to chamber. Some are so faint they disappear unless viewed at exactly the right angle. But once seen, they're unmistakable. You find a panel that looks blank. Van holds a copper bowl and taps it gently near the top. You hear the vibration bounce softly back. Not speech, not music, but resonance, like memory trapped in stone. Later, as you dust the upper frame of a lintel, you spot something odd, a tiny smudge of blue pigment clinging to the corner of a carved flower. Not natural patina, not lichen, it's ancient paint. Most of the temple now is monochrome, browns, greys, soft greens from moss. But once, many believe, the carvings were painted in vibrant colour. Bright reds, rich golds, midnight blues. Time washed it away. But this spot survived. You clean around it carefully, leaving the paint untouched, the whisper of a once sky blue bloom. By late afternoon, the sun filters through the carved screen windows and casts shifting shapes on the floor. You and Van sit beneath one, drinking water from cooled clay cups. You ask if the whispering wall still works for actual voices. He shrugs. Maybe. Depends what you're asking. You lean back against the wall, eyes closed, and whisper again. What do you remember? This time, the wind seems to reply, stirring dry leaves into a soft swirl, brushing your arm with a chill that doesn't belong to the hour. Van smiles. Better than a textbook, right? You nod, because this wall isn't just decorated, it's tuned. It's lived through centuries of footsteps, floods, chants, fires, laughter, war, pigeons, and people like you, just passing through brush in hand, trying to uncover what never really left. As the light fades, you brush your hand along the stone one last time. It's warm. You're handed a lamp today, not a modern flashlight, not even a rechargeable lantern. A clay oil lamp, shallow, soot-streaked, with a frayed cotton wick floating in sesame oil. This, you're told, is archive work. You follow your guide, a short, barrel-shaped man named Mirat, to the lower gallery vaults, where light bulbs dare not shine and tourists never wander. The stone corridor descends in a slow curve, like a staircase carved into time itself. It smells like wax, lichen, and old decisions. The temperature drops. And then, click. A rat lights his lamp, holds it aloft and says, "Don't touch anything unless it touches you first." You can't tell if he's joking. Down here, beneath the bustle of the temple above, the air feels heavy, silent, waiting. The walls are smoother than usual, less decorative, more functional. This was not a place of ceremony. This was for storage, for records, for ritual gear, possibly for the forgotten things. Things not meant for daily sight, but still too sacred to discard. You pass a row of stone niches, empty now, but dust outlines remain. Scrolls, statues, boxes of offerings. No one knows. Some believe these underground vaults were used to house ritual backups, duplicates of statues, extra garments, replacement incense trays. Others argue they were priestly quarters and the niches were for personal belongings. No records survive, only echoes. Marat shows you the first task, inscription rubbings. You take a thin sheet of rice paper, stretch it over a panel of nearly invisible carvings, then gently tap it with a tamping brush coated in black ash paste. The letters appear like ghosts, graceful Khmer curves, delicate despite the stone. One passage records a list of astrological calculations. Another seems to describe a dream. You pause. "A dream?" you ask. Marat nods. Some priests recorded them, just in case they were prophecies, or recipes, or both. You trace a line that reads something like, "A serpent of light moved across the eastern sky. A monk boiled honey." You have no idea what it means, but you love it. Next, you help with inventory cleaning. This means cataloguing the fragments, statue parts, ceremonial objects, carved cornerstones, housed in a side chamber so small you can touch all four walls if you try. There's a hand, marble white and beautifully formed, with a ring still visible. A mask, cracked, but still smiling. A tray made from bronze engraved with a lotus pattern and bearing 4 fingerprints preserved in oil and time. You clean each with a brush barely thicker than a pencil. Every groove, every chip, every edge is recorded on a linen tally sheet beside the object. You're not allowed to speak. Marat says the silence help is keep the memory stable. You're not sure what that means either. But somehow it fits. A quiet surprise waits in the rear vault, a mural hidden behind a stack of sandbags once placed during a flood decades ago. When they're moved, the wall breathes out a puff of dust and colour flares into view. The mural is small, no more than a metre wide, but vivid. It shows a temple gardener, bent at the waist, tending a line of flowering vines. Not a deity, not a king, just a man with a hat and a watering gourd. His sandals are worn, his hairline receding. You stare, he's smiling. A rat says, "There are only 3 murals like this we know of, scenes from everyday life. The rest are divine or royal." Why was this one hidden? "No idea," he replies. "Maybe he asked for it." You clean around the edges with a cloth so soft it barely touches the surface. The paint flakes a little, but most of it holds. The gardener keeps smiling. You spend the final hour of the day sealing the records. That means carefully stacking rice paper rubbings into scroll tubes, wrapping them in cotton bands and slotting them into horizontal stone shelves carved into the wall. Each tube is marked with charcoal and tied with palm string. No modern files, no digital copies. Just memory, stone, and smoke-black letters waiting to be remembered again someday. As you climb the stairs back into the world of air and sky, you look back. The corridor glows faintly, like a dragon's throat lit from within. The air is warmer here. The temple sounds return, chirps, wind, a goat complaining in the far distance, and you wonder how many people passed above these vaults, never knowing what lay just beneath. As you return the lamp to Mirat, he says, "The temple has a mind." You nod. It certainly has a memory. And today you touched part of it. You wake to the smell of turmeric, which is unexpected, because your alarm clock is a rooster, your floor is stone, and your breakfast is usually some mixture of rice, fruit, and not turmeric. But today the air carries the warm, earthy scent of ritual preparation. You report to the central shrine corridor, where several monks are already busy, sweeping, chanting softly, sprinkling water from long-handled ladles carved with lotus stems. The temple feels different today, less like a monument, more like a heartbeat. Today you are joining the cleansing ceremony crew. This happens only a few times a year. It's part practical, part spiritual, part spectacle. And your job is to assist without disrupting. Think of it as janitor meets stagehand meets apprentice to the divine. You're handed a bundle of banana leaves. Why? For folding. You and 3 others sit cross-legged on woven mats and begin the process of folding and pinning leaves into small dishes, each meant to hold petals, drops of sandalwood oil, and pinches of ground rice. These offerings will be placed in niches throughout the temple during the cleansing walk. The folding is harder than it looks. Yours look like soggy hats, but eventually, with guidance from a very patient elder, you craft a passable tray. Then it's time to dust the thresholds, all of them, not with rags, but with bundles of sacred grass dipped in rainwater, stored in old clay jars. You walk from doorway to doorway, sweeping gently across each stone sill. It's symbolic, you're told, cleansing the path between realms, the steps between mundane and sacred. You begin to feel like you're erasing the footprints of time itself. In the inner sanctuary, the statues are carefully dabbed with infused water, not poured, not scrubbed, just gently pressed, with white cloths dipped in a mix of lotus, ginger, and chrysanthemum. You assist by replacing the cloths as they grow stained with soot and time. One statue, a towering figure with 6 arms and a mysterious smile, seems almost amused by the attention. You whisper, "You enjoying the spa day?" The monk beside you coughs to cover a laugh. Then comes the incense wave. Lines of caretakers pass through the galleries with sticks of incense bundled like tiny fireworks, the smoke tracing lazy arcs behind them. You walk beside them, holding trays to collect ash, fanning the scent toward carvings long hidden in shadow. The temple smells like wood and warmth and sleep. Historians still debate whether these cleansing rituals date back to Angkorian times, or whether they're modern additions layered over older forms. Some say fragments of chants found in inscriptions match modern prayers. Others argue it's impossible to know. Rituals morph, blend, survive in different clothes. Either way, the stones seem to like it. In the afternoon, you're assigned to the shadow wall, a section of corridor where light never quite reaches the same way twice. Here, the carvings are fainter, the walls darker, the lichen bolder. Your job, oiling. You dip a cloth into a thin solution made from boiled tamarind seed and lemon rind, then wipe it gently over the surface of the wall. It doesn't clean. It nourishes. It gives the stone a sheen that makes carvings stand out like they've just exhaled. One carving shows a tree, just a tree, branches spreading wide, roots curling beneath, tiny animals nestled within. Not a god, not a king, just a tree. You clean it slowly and feel something shift. As evening approaches, the final circle begins. Everyone, monks, caretakers, even a few visitors, gathers in the outer courtyard. A bell sounds, soft and low. One by one, they begin to walk the perimeter of the temple, placing folded leaves, lighting tiny oil cups, sprinkling water. You follow, not at the front, not at the back. Somewhere in the rhythm, a banana leaf in your hand, shadow on your shoulder. The temple hums beneath your feet. This isn't just cleaning, it's remembering, repairing things you can't see, apologizing to time, thanking the stones, reminding the carvings that someone still cares. As the circle completes, the last bell rings. The courtyard glows with tiny flames. The air smells like history that's been blessed. You sit on the steps of the eastern gate and remove your sandals, rubbing your sore feet. A dog lies beside you, tail wagging once. A monk passes and says, "Tomorrow it gets dusty again." You smile, that's the point. You begin the morning in absolute darkness, not metaphorically, literally. You're deep inside the inner northern gallery, tasked with the most precise, and frankly, claustrophobic, assignment yet, polishing relic niches. These are recessed cavities carved into the walls, often just a few feet wide, where sacred objects were once stored. Now, most are empty, but they still matter. Stone remembers, your guide says, handing you a small linen satchel filled with rice husk ash, beeswax, and tamarind seed oil, a soft, fragrant mixture, perfect for gentle restoration. You wedge yourself into the first niche, back bent, head bowed. The only light comes from a shaft of sun squeezing through a distant slit in the stone. It feels more like being inside a memory than a room. The stone inside is smoother than the outer walls. Fewer carvings. More traces of use, burn marks from oil lamps, soot-blackened corners, the faint outline of something circular, long since removed. You dip a cloth into the polishing mix and begin, working in slow, concentric circles. The smell is warm and old, like time steeped in spice. Outside, the temple stirs. A bird calls once. Footsteps echo down a corridor. But here, inside this tiny pocket of space, it's just you, your breath, and the stone. You finish the first niche, crawl out, and blink at the sudden return of light, then move on to the next. Each one tells a different story. One contains a ring of soot, just the right size for a prayer bowl. Another has a carved lip, perhaps once sealed by a small door. One has scratch marks, faint but clear, circling around a small central dent, a ritual, an accident, an attempt to dig deeper. Historians still argue what these niches were for. Some say they housed relics of the Buddha. Others believe they held sacred documents or personal offerings from temple caretakers. A few speculate they were simply architectural quiet zones, places designed to amplify reflection, both spiritual and acoustic. Your knees ache by the fifth cavity. Your fingers smell like tamarind. Your elbows are flecked with soot, and still you press on, because somehow cleaning these empty spaces feels like reading without a book, like learning from silence. At midday, you're invited to the keeper's table, a shaded stone slab used for meal breaks, tool sorting, and today, mango peeling. An older woman named Kanya offers you a piece of fruit sprinkled with chili salt. You accept, grateful. "Did you see the snake one yet?" she asks. You pause. "The what?" She smiles. "You'll know it when you do." Back to work. The snake niche turns out to be real. You find it near the Eastern Meditation Hall. Its interior carved, not plain, but lined with a shallow, coiling serpent, barely visible unless light hits just right. You polish around it reverently. Its head is resting near the floor. Its tail curls above like a sleeping guard. The legend, according to Kanya, is that one of the earliest temple guardians was a Naga spirit, a protective force that coiled itself into stone to keep watch forever. You whisper a quiet thank you just in case. In the afternoon, you're reassigned to a threshold reset, the ritual cleaning of the central sanctuary's main entrance. This is not a mop-and-go task. It involves brushing rice flour into the cracks of the threshold stones, sweeping it out again, then tracing the carvings along the base of each column with water dipped in jasmine and betel leaf. The flour finds hidden patterns, symbols etched too shallow to see by eye, but revealed when white dust settles in them. A dancing figure, a palm leaf, a spiral. "You're feeding the memory," says the monk beside you, "so it doesn't forget its name." You believe him. The day ends with a shadow alignment, a rare moment when the sun hits the west entrance at just the right angle and casts a perfect rectangular beam through 3 doorways in a row. The whole temple seems to pause. You stand quietly in the final doorway, watching the light land precisely on the tip of a carved Garuda's wing. You don't say a word. Some alignments aren't for recording. They're for witnessing. As the beam fades and dusk seeps into the corners, you help pack away the polishing cloths, rewrap the tamarind satchels, and fold your now dusty sash. On your way out, you pause by one final niche, empty, quiet, dark. You bow your head just slightly and whisper, "Ah, I remember you now." The stone, as always, says nothing, but you feel it warm beneath your hand. The final day begins before sunrise. You're up, while the sky is still a soft bruise of violet and silver, and the birds are too sleepy to chirp. The temple is silent in that particular way. Ancient things get silent, like it's holding its breath. Today you help with the first sweep. Not a metaphor, an actual sweep. You and 5 others walk barefoot through the inner eastern colonnade, dragging long-handled palm brooms behind you, the bristles hissing softly across the stone. You're not sweeping dust, not really. You're sweeping away night, gathering the hush and slow breath of dreams so the day can begin clean. It's oddly peaceful. You pass the still-shuttered prayer nooks, the faded lion statues curled in repose, the shallow lotus basins waiting for sun. No one speaks. Even the wind stays quiet. Your path ends at the main tower base, where the steps climb steep and narrow, worn shiny by millions of feet. You climb them slowly now, one step at a time. Each rise feels heavier today, not from fatigue, but from memory. At the top, you sit and look. Out over the full temple grounds, courtyards dotted with morning mist, tree branches swaying like arms, stretching after sleep, a lone rooster walking too confidently across a sacred causeway. This place has become a friend, a patient one, a strange one, a deeply complicated one, and now you're part of its memory too. Below, the daily work resumes. You see caretakers brushing algae from basins, monks lighting incense with practiced hands, a child trying and failing to chase a squirrel out of the West Pavilion. All the beautiful, boring things that keep a temple alive. Later you descend and are handed your last task, closing the restoration log. It's a cloth-bound book, not digital, no keyboard. Just paper soft from age and ink, thick with sandalwood scent. Yeah, e-scent. You write your name, your dates, your tasks. And then there's a line that says simply, Reflections. You hesitate. Then write, The temple does not need me, but it welcomed me, and I am not the same. You close the book. You spend the final hour walking slowly through your favorite spaces, the whispering wall, the hidden gardener, the roof with the bat, the moat, spiral where petals still float, the crack in the southern gate, shaped exactly like a lightning bolt. You touch them all, not to leave a mark, but to say goodbye. As the sun climbs higher, you sit once more at the edge of the lotus pond. The same heron is there, standing on the same leg, or maybe a different heron. Who knows? You breathe. Not deeply, not dramatically, just enough to notice the wind shift. And then you rise. Your hands are calloused, your sash is faded. You smell like rice flour and tamarind and stone. You are not a monk, not a builder, not a scholar, but for one quiet span of time you helped keep this place breathing. You helped the temple remember itself, and in doing so it remembered you. Now, let the lights grow softer. You've walked a long, winding path, through galleries and thresholds, across roofs and down into vaults, your fingertips brushing dust that might be older than stories. And now, there is nothing more to clean, nothing more to catalogue. The temple stands quiet once more. The air is still, fragrant with ancient wood and distant incense, the last sounds fading into soft, silken silence. You sit beneath a carved archway, the stone warm behind your back, and listen. Not for voices, not for footsteps, just for time itself, settling like a sheet drawn over memory. The wind stirs gently through the trees. Shadows stretch long across the temple walls. Somewhere far away, water trickles through a cleaned channel, carrying petals toward a lotus pond, lit by starlight. You close your eyes, not from exhaustion, but from peace. You remember the feel of moss under your palms, the hush of ancient script revealed with ash, the stillness of carvings slowly blinking into the light. All of it soft now, all of it floating just beyond thought. The temple will remain, and so will you, both changed, both quiet. Now lie back a little further. Let the air cool on your cheeks. Let the walls fade into dreams. There's nothing left to carry, only calm, only breath, only the long, slow exhale of stone that has waited 1,000 years and sleeps deeply between each sunrise.